All right, everybody, good evening, and to our guests that are joining us virtually as well, good evening to you also. We are here for our April caucus meeting. And to start right out, excited to welcome Mr. Justin Brune from the Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center. And we'll offer the floor to Mr. Brune and our students to talk about their experiences at Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center. Lots of excitement happening over at CPA-CTC, and we have some exciting agenda items to go over as well as we move forward with the building project that we're excited to be a part of and much needed for our students in both Cumberland and Perry, and a smidgen of Adams County. So, Mr. Brune, I'll stop talking, and the mic's yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fox. Appreciate the opportunity to come and talk tonight. I brought a fantastic young lady who's going to share her experiences at Cumberland Perry. Before I turn things over to her, I know I say this regularly, but really appreciate the support that we get from Susquenita, from Dr. Fox to Mr. Funk to the counselors. Just really, really great lines of communication with students and operations, and the counselors do a really spectacular job of helping students learn about the opportunities at Cumberland Perry, which of those 22 programs might be a good fit for them, helping them to apply, helping them to make a decision, and really trying to put students in a place where they're going to find some success. So thank you very much for that. Before I turn things over here, I do have a couple of handouts, and my intent is not to bombard you with papers, but I do have a couple here. This first one is just some updated facts and figures about the school as a whole. So I'll pass that one around if you would. Thanks. The second handout is a little bit more specific to Susquenita, some enrollment information, some budgetary information specific to the district. And then the last handout is some details about our upcoming facility project. As Dr. Fox said, we're really, really excited about being able to do some facility expansion and some facility improvements. I think the real driving force with the facility project is last year we had 400 students on a wait list that wanted a career and technical education experience, and Cumberland Perry was not able to accommodate them. The year before, we had 300 plus students on a wait list, and this year is looking like it's going to be a similar scenario. And so what the facility project is going to do is it's going to give us ultimately about between 270 and 280 more spots for students, more career and technical education opportunities for students. And that's really going to be a generational type project for our consortium. We have 13 districts. We are the only training facility of our kind in Cumberland and Perry counties, and we take that responsibility to heart. We want to do everything that we can to get students the training, the credentials, the college credits, everything that they can use to take and jump into that next phase of their life. And so by doing this project, we're hoping to position ourselves, the region, our consortium districts for what's really going to be a growth in the need for the type of skills and training that we provide. I think if you talk to any employer in any career area, whether it's construction or manufacturing or human services or transportation, there's just not enough employees right now, and so our employers are struggling. We're trying to help meet that need. So I'm going to pass around some information that's all kind of about the facility project, some of the why questions, but then also some of the what's happening type of questions with this facility project. Our goal is to break ground this summer with an anticipated occupancy for the 26-27 school year, and then we'll start phasing in some of those new programs. So I'm going to pass this one around, and It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Natalie Connors.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. My name is Natalie Connors. I am a third-year student at Cumberland Perry Votech, where I study early childhood education. The reason I picked this class was because of my sister. She's always talked to me about the class, and whenever we were in the pandemic, she let me sit in on calls and even asked the teacher some questions. I have wanted to be a teacher for a couple of years, and when my school was having interviews for Votech, I only had one class in mind. In early childhood education, it is a 3-year program. Your first year, you learn how to create a lesson plan, perform a lesson plan, and you have a lot of notes to take. Level 2, you learn about how a child focuses and what could help them focus. You also learn about a child's behavior in the classroom and what that could mean about what's happening in their lives or anything else. And level 3, you either have the choice to do co-op and learn how to work in the real world, or you can choose to stay in the classroom. In the classroom, you get more hours of learning and work towards your Child Development Associate's degree, your CDA. Your third year, you also learn about physical disabilities and how to accommodate students and their parents. Closer to the end of your third year, you have CPR training. So does almost every other class, but our training is more focused on kids and how we could help them if there was an incident. My favorite thing about my program is being able to teach young minds and help children grow. I am involved with FCCLA, which stands for Family Career Community Leaders of America. I have been a secretary and a treasurer. In this club, we make projects that benefit children. You make a presentation and take it to a competition. In your presentation, you will be scored on whatever topic you pick or fall under. My first year, my topic was putting cursive back into the curriculum. We brought up how people need to learn how to do their signature and why it's so important. We did a lot of research, we got petitions signed, and we did a lot of surveys. We placed third in that category. My second year, our topic was helping kids with eating disorders. We mainly focused on how it should be talked about earlier in their lifetime. I am a co-op student, and I think it is a great opportunity for me to learn outside of school and understand how it all works. I feel that now that I am out of my classroom, I can see how things work more clearly and understand how I would have to do it in a real job. After high school, I am planning on going to college to be a special education teacher. I feel like not a lot of people sign up for this job, and it's something that we do need. I would like to thank the board for the opportunity to let me speak, and if you have any questions, I am happy to answer. Thank you for your time.
Just before you leave, if you could see Mrs. Bressy. She's our Director of Special Education. We want to stay in contact with you.
Hey, just in full transparency, as we were talking over there, she's also thinking of becoming a vet too. So, you know, that might be a backup plan. So we'll see how that turns out. So Natalie's participating in cooperative education. Some students that are not, we also partner with Shippensburg University. Students have the opportunity to take Shippensburg University courses and get a jump start on those credits if they so desire. So really proud of Natalie and all the students. She's a good example of students that I think there's a conception out there that students that go to what used to be called the Votech are going out and just immediately getting a job. And the reality of that situation is it varies a lot student to student. We have probably 50% of our students that are going to pursue post-secondary education and 50% that are going to enter the workforce immediately after high school. And it varies a lot program to program. If you go down to our diesel technology program, you're going to probably find that most of those students are going, if they don't have jobs already and it's April, then they're going to have a job very, very soon. We actually have a diesel technology student, a senior in high school since November, making $27.50 at Old Dominion. And but then you go to a program like computer programming, where we partner with Harrisburg University, and the students get 11 computer science credits through Harrisburg University. Most of them are probably going to pursue some kind of post-secondary education. And then we have other programs where it varies student to student in there. So a lot of opportunities. I think that old conception that going into a career and technical center and entering a career and tech program kind of limits your future options is anything but true these days. So I would be very happy to answer questions about the school, the operations, the programs, the facility project, anything that anybody is interested in. But really, mostly just appreciate the opportunity to come and talk tonight. Well, email is always great, and I will respond promptly to email, or you can give me a call, and I can, or you can, Dr. Fox, and we have pretty open lines of communication as well.
Thank you again. I'm not sure if you know or not, but I attended and graduated from Cumberland Perry as well many years ago. Went on to college afterwards. Don't necessarily do what I went to tech school for, but you know, I did at one point. I went for there was an electronics program back in the day. We did a lot of electrocuting the freshmen with the power supplies and stuff whenever we were there. But anyhow, no, it was a great experience, great school, taught me a lot. I did a lot with like car stereos and things right after school, so I learned all of that, you know, based upon my understanding of electronics. And it's great to see, and I'm looking forward to the expansion and getting more kids in, because it's unfortunate when you have kids that, you know, want to pursue a career, get started early, and there's no seating available for them, no space. So
we had the electronics program until about 2017, 2018, and a lot of times programs just naturally evolve. So we've had automotive technology from the day the school opened to today, but it's not the same automotive technology with the concentration on all the electronics and you know, the electrical functions in cars. The electronics program is one that we did discontinue, and we changed it, and we turned that into an electromechanical. Some schools call it mechatronics. We call it automation, robotics, and electronics, because a student survey told us that was the best name for them to understand it. So a lot of electronics still in there, just a little bit different focus on PLCs, motor controls, hydraulics, and kind of keeping equipment and factories and distribution centers running. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for joining us and coming this evening. And thank you for all you do at Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center. And enjoy the remaining few days and the end of the school year. Hard to say, it's a few days, right? Moving along in our agenda, we're going to go over some personnel items for the agenda on April the 16th, and I'll move through this relatively quickly. Under personnel, under resignations, unfortunately, we have Mrs. Jennifer Flowers at the end of the school year will be resigning from the position of music teacher at the middle school. We have Mrs. Pagliaro will be resigning from the position of community relations, effective to be determined. Sarah Turpin from the position of custodian, and that was effective April the 5th. And Aaron Weaver, unfortunately, from the position of music teacher at the conclusion of the 22-23 school year. We have a retirement. Congratulations to Deb Feinstott, resignation with the intent to retire as a member of our lone member of our cafeteria staff. She has been at the conclusion of this school year, and she's been with our school district for 28 years. So congratulations, and thank you, Deb, for your outstanding service. Under employment, we're excited to welcome the start of the 23-24 school year, Dylan Benowitz He's coming to us from Georgia as a high school special education teacher. Pat Hammaker from Marysville as custodian 1, effective April the 1st. Stephanie Pagalero, the position of middle school ELA teacher, hence the reason for the above. And Sarah Turpin, unfortunately, didn't work out in terms of the custodian position for her. We have a change in status, Zach Laux, Master's Step 8 to Master's Step 15. So congratulations on your academic accomplishments. And a voluntary transfer, we have Caitlin Kaufman from the position of first grade at the elementary school to the position of elementary autism support teacher at the 24-25 school year. And Jeff Kiner moving from the elementary school to middle school, 6th grade at the 24-25 school year, so starting next school year. A leave of absence for Jess Gomez at the middle school under FMLA. And we also have the motion to waive policy 339 for uncompensated leave for Carol Howell from March 11th to May 6th, at which time then we're excited to hopefully welcome back Carol. We have some STEAM Adventure Camp teachers, and this will be our last year to use the ESSER 3 funds for that as well, and some summer camp teachers as well as using ESSER 3 funds for the summer camp teacher for Early Birds, which is our kind of pre-kindergarten program to welcome our students in. It's been a very impactful program for that as well. So that kind of rolls out our leaves, transfers, and employment. Any questions on that? Hearing none, I will move into agenda items for April the 16th. We are going to have, excited to have some of our high school media students and Mr. Shepler here to present after our student presentations on the 16th. We have a motion to approve a resolution permitting each member school district of Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center to adopt the lease and sublease once final debt service payments under the sublease are known, along with allowing each member school district, including our school, the following: to execute a certificate terminating the existence of Cumberland Perry Area Vocational Technical School Authority, which I believe has been in existence since 1950. Execute documents necessary to terminate the existing lease from the technical center and member school districts, and execute a special warranty deed conveying the technical center facilities to member school district, including our school district, and the joint board of Cumberland Perry Area Career and Tech Center. That's a really important resolution step in terms of moving forward with the building project. Speaking of resolutions, we have a motion to approve a resolution to permit myself and Mr. Holmes to execute all documents and agreements for the Susquenita School District as we look to apply for the Commonwealth Financing Authority's Facility Improvement Competitive Grant application. And that is quite the application and quite the process as we move through that. I believe it's due in May, and we're moving through it as fast as we certainly can. And that is certainly to improve certain conditions in areas and maximize any payments that we have. Speaking of HVAC. A motion to approve the Act 93 agreement for 3 years from 2024 and 2027. We have first read of policy 239, which is for exchange students, which was previously policy 202.1. And we have some discipline committee recommendations for 061611 and 032711. And then finishing up with some board reports and future budget discussions on April 16th as well. So we'll continue our budget discussions at the end of caucus this evening, and then launch pad into certainly next Tuesday as well to continue those. And that rounds out some agenda items. Before I turn it over to Mr. Holmes in finance, are there any questions? All right, Mr. Holmes, the floor.
Certainly. You have a board summary with revenue summarized for you. As of March 31st, we've received $23,320,760, which represents 70.82% of our budgeted expected revenue And for expenditures, we have expended $24,012,786.37, or 71.29% of our expected expenditures for the year. Thank you.
All right, any questions for Mr. Holmes in Finance?
So if I'm looking at the expenditures totals, is that the budgeted expenditures, the 33 million, or is that what it's actually been spent? We spent 24 million?
We spent 24 million of the anticipated 33.
Okay, so if the expenditures are, is the expenditures then anticipated year end to be 33.6?
Yes,
Okay, and then so if our revenues are expected to be 32.9,
yes.
so does that mean we're only going to be off 700,000?
According to the budget, yes.
And remind me what our budget shortfall was last year, predicted?
1.4 million?
Okay. Okay, so we're about 700,000 to the less bad.
The interesting factor,
True.
then you'll see this later on, is we don't always get what the basic ed funding subsidy is. And we will not predict.
No, I'm not
or-
pointing a finger.
No,
I'm
no, no,
just
but I
asking,
think
I'm
it's
just
important
clarifying.
to know that when we build this, we will not add anticipated just because of the fact nothing is guaranteed. And certainly and we saw where the budget was this year. It took a little bit of time to put the finishing touches on that. So we'll show what we're hopeful of at the end today, and then what is a rollover from the 23-24 budget.
Why did I think it was worse than 1.5 when we did our budget last year? Like what our shortfall was supposed to be?
I can certainly go back and look at that historically and try to get that number for you.
Okay,
I know we carved down
Yeah,
a
when we
lot.
first started talking about it, it was over 2, I believe, and it dwindled down over time.
yeah, yeah, maybe if you could look for me, thank
Yeah.
you.
All right, we're going to toss it over to Curriculum Instruction and Assessment for a brief update.
Thanks, Dr. Fox. Just letting everyone know, we are heading into testing season, and PSSA testing starts at the elementary and the middle school starting on April 22nd, and that window runs, including makeups, through May 3rd, so a couple weeks of that. A couple other things to mention that is going on soon at the elementary school. We have STEAM Night coming up this Thursday on the 11th. And we also have a Title I night being held in conjunction with the PTO Spring Fling, where we're actually going to have a table and work on handing out some items to families regarding Title I math and reading services. So we're excited about that. And then also we have coming up on April 17th, our District Federal Programs Family Meeting. So some information will be going out to families soon about that. So we're hopeful that you can join us. Also want to let everyone know that we are getting very close to releasing the Professional Learning Trade Day catalog. We're hopeful that we will get that out at the end of this week or the beginning of next week. And we're also really excited to be starting a Professional Learning Task Force, which is going to be meeting on April 24th. We have a lot of really great volunteers from each building to join us for that committee, so really hopeful that we'll get a lot done and accomplished at that first meeting. I also want to bring up, I know Dr. Fox has already mentioned the STEAM and the Early Birds camps, but I have to kind of give another shout out for that because registration is open, and with kindergarten registration happening right now and tomorrow, we have sent out save the date information to those families so they can register for Early Birds if they are able to. And then one last thing, just keep us in your thoughts as we work through monitoring season in our department. So we have a lot going on coming up the next couple months. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions for curriculum instruction and assessment? All right, we are excited to welcome our financial advisors to talk about the proposals. As a board. You authorized our financial advisors to go out for requests for proposals to look at what the interest rates would be for a new money loan of up to $15 million. And we're excited to welcome Mr. Lou Verdelli, the Managing Director of Raymond James, Ryan Brockman, the Vice President of Raymond James, and Garrett Moore, Senior Managing Consultant for PFM. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming.
Thanks, Dr. Fox. This works. Can you hear me? I don't know if you need it. I'm Ryan Brockman with Raymond James. As Dr. Fox mentioned, also with me from Raymond James is Lou Verdelli and Garrett Moore from PFM. We're here to provide a financing update on the status of the bank loan RFPs that went out a few weeks ago. This is not a voting meeting for the bank loan, it's just to give you an update, give you some information to think about between now and next week's board meeting. Page 2 of tonight's handout, which is also shown on the screen, is interest rate chart showing what municipal borrowing rates have done historically since 2020. This is the 10-year spot of the curve. It's just to give you an idea of how rates have fluctuated over the years. You can see the bottom, the low point we reached was in August of 2020, all-time low borrowing rates for municipals. They remain low through 2020 and through 2021. In 2022, the Fed began hiking interest rates, and you can see what that did to municipal borrowing rates as they shot up rather quickly. From there, rates bounced around for a while until we reached a new recent high back in October of 2023. Rates peaked then because the Fed started to talk about interest rate cuts that were coming. So we started to see rates coming back down. This is something we've really only experienced in the municipal market. If you look at treasury rates, if you look at mortgage rates, they have not come down as significantly as municipal rates have over the last several months. A few reasons for that. Mainly, we think it's being driven by the amount of stimulus money that's out there for schools. Many schools are sitting on a lot of cash that they've received from the federal government post-COVID, and they've used that money basically as cash to pay for their projects. So the supply side in the municipal market is down considerably, and the demand side is still there. So those two are really pushing rates lower because there's a lot more competition for the paper that's out there. So rates since the end of October have dropped almost a full percentage point. So the takeaway here is we're not at the low point that we experienced in 2020, but historically we're still at a very favorable borrowing environment. On this chart, you can see the average 10-year rate over the 23 plus years is about a 280. We're currently around a 266, so it's still below that 23-ish year average. I look back at our last presentation we gave to the board was December 18th. We went through a couple projects, we discussed solar, et cetera. And the rate, just so you know, then was about 33 basis points lower. So they have creeped up since that last meeting, but again, we're still at it's still an advantageous time to borrow. Page 3, like we've shown in the past, this is a summary of your outstanding debt. I want to point out this is your debt service is as of the beginning of the fiscal year. So at the beginning of 2024, you had 2 loans outstanding, the 2020 notes and the 2022 notes. 2020 notes have since been paid off, so they carry a 0 principal balance. The 2022 notes, there's one more payment due that's in September 1, 24, and that payment's about $2.3 million. So once that payment is made later this year, the school will be out of debt. One thing we'd like to reiterate to our school clients, and we've mentioned it over the last several months, specifically to Susquenita, is we encourage our school clients, once you're out of debt or you're approaching that point where you're soon going to be out of debt, to consider leaving those mills in your budget for debt service, because once you start reallocating those mills elsewhere in the budget. It's very, very difficult under Act 1. You're limited to the amount of the tax increase to get that debt service back in your budget. So we just want to reiterate that if you can keep that in your budget for debt service, it's strongly encouraged because it's very, very difficult, if not impossible, if you have a future capital project of substantial size, to get enough mills in that budget for debt service once you've taken them away to be able to afford a project. So just wanted to reiterate that. And again, this is before any future debt. So this does not look at any of the bank loan proposals that we received today. Page 4 is a financing timeline. You can see back on March 12th, the financing team was authorized to proceed with the bank loan RFP. A week later, we put, over the next week or so, we put together that RFP, ran it by the legal team, they signed off on it, and we sent that RFP off to 15 different regional and community banks that are active in the municipal field. Those responses were due back today by 10 a.m. I'm happy to report that we received 6 responses. 6 banks out of 15 is a very, very good response rate, especially given the current environment that we're in. There's some uncertainty out there with when the Fed is going to cut again. There was talks that it would be 5 or 6 cuts. Now it's down to 3-ish. Some are saying 1 or none. No one knows. And no one knows the timing of that. So there's a lot of uncertainty out there. So to receive 6 bank proposals with all the uncertainty, we think is a big win. There's a lot of competition for this bank loan for Susquenita. So we received those bids today. I'll show you a summary here shortly. Those last 2 items, again, this is just an informational meeting. We're not looking to approve anything today. It's just to give you, the data that we received. Next Tuesday, we would look to come back to seek approval of the winning bank loan bid. And then we have on there tentatively, we're expected to close on or around May 22nd. We have some wiggle room there, but as of right now, that's what we're targeting is May 22nd for settlement, which would be the day that you would receive the proceeds from the bank that offers the lowest or most attractive proposal to the district. Page 5, this is the meat of the presentation. Again, we received 6 proposals today. The 6 are outlined in the box top. We received a proposal with 2 options from JP Morgan Chase, another from TD Bank that consisted of 2 options, one from Webster Bank, S&T Bank, Capital One, and FNB or First National Bank. And these are sorted by just the rate. We're just sorting this by rate for now, but it's not necessarily, we don't believe that that's the most attractive package for the school, and we'll go through that here in a second. JP Morgan offered a 401 fixed rate for the full term, which is 10 years. The downside with that is it's non-callable. So if rates were to come down in the future, the school would not have the ability to prepay on that loan or refinance that and realize interest rate savings. Okay, so that's a big downside. We like having that flexibility to, if you needed to restructure debt in the future to carve out, a couple $100,000 for whatever, you have that ability if you have flexibility with prepayment terms. Non-callable, there's not a whole lot you can do with that. So that would be a big downside in our opinion. They also offered a 4.72% fixed, which would be callable in about 2 years. So that just shows you what JP Morgan sees as the value of having that flexibility. They're saying prepayable, you can't prepay it at all, it's a 401. They're saying 71 basis points higher to get a 2-year prepayment provision. So they're seeing a lot of value in that flexibility, as are we. We think the next one, the TD Bank proposal, they offered a 4.23% fixed, 22 basis points higher than JP Morgan, but it also comes with an 18-month prepayment provision. So on or around December 1 of 2025, you would have the ability from that point forward to refund. If rates were lower, you could refund that with, you could take out a bond issue, you could do another bank loan, replace that 423 with something lower to achieve some savings. Off to the right there, you see the total debt service. So we ran each of these proposals through our model, and that shows you the net debt service The TD Bank proposal, based on that 423, is about $200,000 more than the JP Morgan proposal. But again, it offers much more flexibility than you would see with the non-callable option for JP Morgan. The other proposals, 429 from Webster, but that comes with essentially a 5-year call provision. So the first 5 years, you wouldn't be able to do anything with that loan. S&T Bank, we thought that was a pretty strong proposal at a 440 fixed, prepayable anytime from day one with no penalty. I'd say the downside with that is the S&T Bank proposal would require you to open up a deposit account with S&T, not for your current deposits, but for the project fund of this issue. So the $15 million that we're looking at would have to be kept with S&T Bank. So I reached out to them today just to get an idea of what their deposit rate was. They're working on it. They're going to get back to me. So as soon as I get that, I'll pass it along to the administration. But I thought that was a pretty aggressive proposal from them. And then Cap 1 a 449 and FNB 477 were a bit higher. One thing I want to point out with the TD Bank proposal, this is an indicative rate. There's a few banks, a few of the larger banks, they don't like fixing the rate until they actually have a signed agreement in their hands, and then they'll go and fix the rate. So that's an indicative rate as of today. Moving forward with the TD proposal, the downside with that is you would have about 1 week of interest rate risk. So if rates moved around between now and Wednesday morning after the board meeting, if we got the approval, rates could move around here or there. It wouldn't be a considerable move unless something catastrophic happened with the market. But nonetheless, I want to point out that that rate could fluctuate a basis point or two or maybe more if something significant happened with the market. There's 2 key economic indicators still coming out this week, and they're both centered around inflation. We've seen the inflation numbers have been pretty out of control the last several months. There's CPI is going to be released tomorrow, and then PPI on Thursday. So unless, if those numbers came in kind of around economists' expectations or slightly higher or lower, we don't see that much of an impact to that 4.23 rate. So with that proposal, we would look to come back to the meeting next week. I would ask for a refreshed rate on Tuesday, so you would know at that meeting. If we get the approval Tuesday night, I would reach out again to get it refreshed Wednesday morning. At that point, I could let them know that we want to lock it in. They would send the administration a rate lock agreement. You would execute that, and then it's set in stone until we hit settlement, and you'd be fixed at that, whatever the rate is at that point. So those are the 6 institutions at the bottom of the page. There's a few more that decided to not bid for whatever reason. Those are the other institutions we sent it to. Moving on to...
Can I ask a question before you move
absolutely.
on? A couple questions. So when you mentioned about the TD Bank being an indicative rate for that option A, what about the S&T Bank? Is that also, you don't have that coded as an indicative rate?
That was not spelled out in the RFP, so that would be a fixed 440, unless they clearly spell it out in the term sheet that they provided in their response. We would assume that is a 4.40 fixed, and yes, that would be the rate.
Okay, and then in terms of the having to keep the money with S&T Bank, if we were going to be arbitraging this money, are we limited to be able to, what we can do with that then if we have to keep it
No.
housed at S&T?
Good question. So as a school district, you have the ability to borrow up to $15 million in a calendar year. If it's under $15 million, then you are not subject to the arbitrage rules during the temporary period, which is 3 years after settlement. And what that means is you can earn an unlimited amount on your investments. You're not restricted to a certain yield on the debt side. You can earn an unlimited amount for that 3-year period of time. And that has no impact on whatever bank you go with.
The one caveat I'll mention to that is, again, we still don't know what S&T's deposit rate is. So we know what they're willing to lend it to you at, to the 440. However, there's no guarantee, to your point, that their deposit rate will be higher than 440. So to the extent they're offering you a 4% deposit rate, then your question is kind of moot, right? Because you're earning 4 and paying 4.
Right.
And sometimes that's what we see. Banks are able to get very aggressive on the lending side
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's what S&T is doing, but sometimes that's what happens, and again, we'll find that out.
That's a good point. That's why we reached out to them, just to get an understanding.
Okay.
If it's a 2%, I mean, that changes things significantly. We still think TD's proposal makes the most sense, even though it's not fixed today. When I talked to the gentleman at TD after they submitted the bid, and he said since they quoted us several months ago, and Treasury rates had risen, I think, 35 basis points, and their indication to us only went up 7 basis points, even though Treasury rates were up significantly higher. So, like I said, unless there's something substantial that happens in the market over the next week, I don't see that 4.23 moving all that much.
And I know you're not recommending JP Morgan Chase, but you have one line for fees and service, but two different rates there.
It would apply. So that's their legal counsel.
No, I'm sorry. So the service of 17.8, is that applying to the 4.01 fixed or the 4.72?
That's the lower. That's the floor
Okay.
one. Yeah, that's their lowest rate. Yep.
Okay.
Good question. Same with TD. That would apply to the 4.23, not the 4.45.
And then I just have one other question. You may answer this somewhere else, so if you are, just tell me to shut up and I'll wait. I'll wait for the trailer. If we decide not to borrow 15 million, are we able to not do that, or are these RFPs only for 15 million? Like we have to commit to 15 million?
We could go back and negotiate if you decide TD is the likely institution between now and next week. If you have an idea of what that amount would be, we could potentially revise the amortization schedule, go back to them, because it's going to change how long and the weighted average life of that issuance. We can go back to them and see if they would be amenable to that. I can't say right now. I'd have to talk to them to see if they'd be on board with it, and what the rate could change based on the average life of what we'd be looking at if it was lower than 15 million.
And I think I was under the impression, maybe I'm wrong, that when we put this RFP out, we still had the option of not going to 15 million. That we were going to put an RFP out to find out what a 15 million would look like, but that we didn't have to borrow 15 million. So I don't know, maybe I misunderstood that.
Sure, and I think when we have the ability to call after 18 months, you technically, correct me if I'm wrong, have the ability to pay that loan back, and then we have the ability to arbitrage funds based upon it. So as long as our arbitrage rate is higher than our loan interest rate, we're still doing okay, if that's fair to say.
Yep. Yeah, if you were looking at 15 million a week ago and now it's down to 12, you could still settle for the 15 million, invest that money. Once we hit that call date, you say we don't need 15, we only need 12, you can prepay 3 million of that loan at that point.
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying. It's the $3.5 million worth of interest. We'd have to be really pretty productive on that interest-bearing investments to offset the $3.5 million in interest. But because that was the number, like we didn't know necessarily when we put the RFP out. But I understand what you're saying. Like,
any other questions on this slide? This has the most information on it. I was expecting a lot of questions on this one. All right. Moving on to page 6. So from here, we took the TD Bank proposal of a 4.23%. We ran it through our model. There were two bogeys here. We were sizing for 15 million, again, for the small issuer exemption, which, again, you can then invest at an unlimited rate for that temporary period. So that's where the 15 million par amount comes from. And then on the far right, under annual debt service, we were sizing this to an annual debt service run rate of just under 2.2 million. So we got it at 2,199 and change for what was that, 9 years, 8 years. And then, so that would run through 2033, and then in 2034, there'd be a partial payment. That total debt service would be about 480,000, and then at that point, you'd be out of debt. So the top shows if you were to do a traditional financing with no capitalized interest. We'll get into capitalized interest here in a minute as an option. The bottom, we ran this a second way and said if you didn't have anything in your budget for this loan for the 25 fiscal year, we could use a portion of the proceeds for capitalized interest, which means basically there's you're not responsible for any payments to your budget in 2025. Basically, it's taking that $491,000 out of your proceeds and making that interest payment for you. So you'd have a net zero impact from this issue on your 25 year. And then we'd start the 2.2 million after that. If you decided not to use Cap I and you wanted that $491,000 to hit your 2025 budget, you can certainly do that. It's just going to take that amount and add it right back to your project fund at settlement. So however you want to approach that, we can certainly incorporate that into the documents when we get there. So that's the annual debt service based on the TD proposal of a 4.23%.
Can I just ask another question? Why is there two payments done in a year, at March and September? Like, what's the breakdown?
Yeah, that's traditionally how municipal bonds have been done. You have two payments throughout the year. One is much more substantial typically, and that's because that's when the principal hits. You pay principal once per year. It's not like a mortgage payment where you're paying every month. It's semi-annually. So you have interest payments every 6 months through the life of the transaction, and then once per year, whatever your principal payment date is, you would have a sizable principal payment. So that's how all bond issues are structured, and that's how the bank loans are structured as well.
And that's how the district's debt has been structured in the past as well.
Okay, thank you.
And one thing I wanted to point out, and you've, again, total control over this, we are, in the past, your last two notes, you have had your principal due 9/1 of the fiscal year, so earlier in the fiscal year. We have kept your payments 9/1/31, but instead of the principal being earlier in the year, we waited until some revenues come in and you're making that payment on March 1. Again, you have flexibility. If you like the 9/1, the sizable payment 9/1, we can do that. We just thought this gives you a little more wiggle room having it later in the school year. Okay. The next page is the estimated sources and uses. Again, we'd be borrowing $15 million. The project fund, assuming, again, a capitalized interest account would be set up to make those first two interest payments. Your project fund would be about $14.39 million. You'd have the capitalized interest fund and then the cost of issuance at the bottom. If you decide that you do not want that capitalized interest fund, you don't want to borrow, set that money aside to make a payment, we can get rid of Cap I. That $491 would then roll into your project fund account, bringing that total to $14,880,000. So again, it's however you want to approach that. We can incorporate capitalized interest. We don't have to. We thought it was interesting just because we didn't think you had this in your budget, so we ran it with capitalized interest. But again, it's completely up to you how you want to.
So the capitalized interest would keep basically no additional debt service for the final year of our current debt service. Okay.
Yes, it's borrowing it, setting that aside. That would earn interest for 6 months and then a year. But when those payments come due, whichever bank, TD in this case, if you went the TD route, they would have the money in an account. They would just make the payment, and it would be a zero impact to your budget for 25 for this loan.
Okay, thanks.
So that's the sources and uses. And then the final page, page 8, this brings back your debt summary. So we're starting this in 2025. We show the payment, annual payment. Again, this will be at the beginning of fiscal year 25. Your 2022 note is that $2.3 million that you still owe. Again, that goes away 9/1 of 24. And then we've factored in the proposed TD Bank note at the what was it, 2.23%. And that's based on capitalized interest. So you see a zero in fiscal year 2025, and then that run rate is about $2.2 million. You can see we've structured this so that it provides a little bit of relief in your budget. You're used to paying about $2.36 million. We're structuring this as a $2.2 million annual run rate. So there's an additional $160,000 freed up in your budget by lowering your annual run rate from 2.36 to 2.2. And again, you can see at the bottom there, we have the call date on this would be around 12/1/25. That's going to depend on when we settle on this issue. So that's all we have. If you have any other questions, we'd be happy to answer them at this time. Thank you.
got one.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this information. Thank you for your work. Thank you for also being our financial advisement team, looking at this from a perspective of keeping our debt mills in place, which is part of the conversation that started, but most importantly, the conversation started about how are we going to self-finance our contributions to Cumberland Perry Area Career and Tech Center, which is roughly $1.38 million to open up and expand those programs and opportunities for students. And then we looked at the opportunity to keep our debt structure in place and see what further capital improvement projects we could do for our district. All right.
This still would leave you in a very enviable debt situation. To be out of debt in 10 years is still a very short debt profile. There's a lot of districts that their debt runs out 30 years, 25 years. So it's still a very short profile.
Sorry, just so everybody heard, the looking at our current debt structure, going out an additional 10 years is still a reasonable and favorable debt portfolio that we have as a financial management tool for us as a district to accomplish capital improvement projects without adding in further and further years of debt, but being able to take care of those without it or overburden onto the community. I think it's a great segue in to talk about STEAM at the middle school. Thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate it. So to kind of set the scene a little bit, one of the things we always look to do is how do we continue to look at our course offerings and look to refresh our current offerings for students. One of those ways certainly is to look at a STEAM continuum. And we get very excited when we talk about a STEAM continuum. And we have a really good, dedicated, and committed team that looks at STEM throughout the school district. And probably no greater champion than Sarah Baer, who has really worked within what we call the Carnegie Framework before and really built that model at the elementary school, as well as our team here as well to continue. And we look at the high school, we look at the elementary school. Now we really need to enhance what's at the middle to have that continuum built throughout. And when we look at STEM, we look at the elements of how do we build, code, design, and create. All of those areas that are important for career and education work standards, as well as related careers throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So with that, Mr. Black, the floor is yours, sir.
Yeah, so I'll just, a couple things too to note, like, I think I've been asked like 4,000 times, like, oh, you're getting rid of computers and all that. So we're not getting rid of computers, right? We're still going to have computers. We're just taking the information Mr. Fisher teaches currently and enhancing that with some STEM features as well. So kudos to Christine. Christine did a lot of the work with technology. Me, her, Ken, Krista, and Dr. Fox sat down. The program we're looking at, Christine, if you want to go to the second one, is called Project Lead the Way. So they have a K through 5 program and a 6 through 8 program. The reason we chose this one, several reasons. One, they allow us to kind of pick the modules we want, so we don't have to buy the whole package. We can kind of pick the modules we feel fits each grade level moving up and just pay for those specific modules, right? I think K through 5, Christine can correct me if I'm wrong, we get all of them based elementary, and us will be using the same kind of format. And then 6 through 8, we'll pick at the middle school the ones that we feel fit our vision and our programs. And also in 8th grade, then meeting with the high school saying, hey, what do you need our students to be able to do when they get to the high school to kind of continue that? So right now we have a gap in the middle school where we don't have that, I want to say like the STEM, we have like computers. So when computers, like when we talk about computers at the middle school, we're looking at Google, Canvas, and Clever is like one of the first ones they do, which we do in every class, right? We're going to keep that in the STEM, but you don't just use it in isolation. We're going to build it around different projects and the students working together. We do typing. We're still going to do typing, and we do typing in every class, right? They're still going to have keyboards and all that stuff. Word processing and coding. So all that stuff's going to be included. So we're not getting rid of the computer elective. We're just enhancing it and putting some STEM aspects into it. If you want to go to the next one, Christy. So that's just telling you what the Project Lead the Way, and then also Project Lead the Way offers training for our staff. So we're looking at, we have the position posted, we have some applicants, and we have some ideas where we want to go moving forward with that. Just some things back up on STEM here. I mean, Project Lead the Way, what it is and how it works. 5th grade, so if you guys aren't familiar with the middle school, 5th grade we do 30-day rotations, so they get kind of like a survey of every little elective we have, 5th and 6th grade. So in 5th grade, we're looking at those two modules with our 5th grade students. So robotics and automation, and robotics and animation challenge. So you do one rotation, you get 2 different modules there, 15 days each. Probably it's 10 to 15 days, so you can see there's wiggle room where we can do other stuff if the teacher's noticing that the students are having trouble with typing or formatting a paper. They can kind of work that in there as well. 6th grade, same thing. So these units will take about 30 days. So we're looking at 2 rotations of STEM for 6th grade students. Design and modeling and energy and environment. 7th grade then, and when we get to 7th and 8th grade, this is when we want to try to mimic the high school where the students have choices. So we have right now, we have 5 electives at the middle school. Students can pick 4 because we have 4 marking periods. So try to get them in the high school mode as what they can pick kind of what they want or what they want to do. So if they would want to do 2 STEM courses, they could pick either app creators or computer science for innovators and makers. And the same with 8th grade then too. We just have we're going to do flight and space and green architecture. It's just the Project Lead the Way, and Christine, again, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's going to be like a 3-year process. And the goal for this is it kind of gives the teacher, since we don't have like a STEM curriculum, it gives them a foundation to build off of. Then once we get those 3 years in, we're going to branch out and kind of settle on what we want to do at Susquenita. We won't need the Project Lead the Way supports anymore because we'll have a foundation built of what we want to do moving forward, and the teacher will have the resources needed. So the goal is to take the resources as we use them and maybe put them in a folder somewhere, so when we build our curriculum, then we have and don't need to rely on them.
So the nice thing is, too, about a lot of these modules that you selected and really work through, when I look at the architecture, right, it connects already into technical education. And we look back through and we look at robotics and automation. Well, that's going to connect up to the high school. When we think of those connections in that framework in some of the classes right now that Mr. Alban is teaching. So we look at the introduction of VEX, which is just the robotics, and thanks to the support of the Black Hawk Foundation, we were able to have certain kits already funded from the VEX robotics program. And then again, with your support, we're looking at the VEX at the high school and then taking that up. And again, those elements of the build, code, design, and create, which is excited to immerse those students in these project and challenge-based learning experiences for them.
Right, and I think it creates a better opportunity of kids working together too. Instead of like the traditional sitting there, we're going to get my type, I'm going to type, I'm going to do this, that. It's more of a student involvement, getting them working together, moving around the school too, making use of spaces we really don't use a lot, right? So there's some spaces, pretty neat spaces in the middle school that we have that aren't used a lot just because the teachers don't see maybe the function of based on their class, but this will, I think, allow for more interaction, more use of different areas as well. I don't know if you had anything, Christine, or to add. Thank you.
So how, because it's been a while since I've had a middle schooler, I know things have changed. So in terms of specials, do they still exist?
Correct.
Okay, so this is going to be replacing,
It's not replacing anything, so it's going to be an add-on to the computer elective we have right now. We're just building STEM into it along with the other stuff like the word processing, the typing, and coding and stuff like that. So it's going to be built around that. So it won't be replacing anything.
so if when my child had computers, this would be part of that?
Correct. It's going to be, yeah.
Okay, do we need a new teacher for this?
No.
Okay,
You can.
Well, we certainly do have, unfortunately, a teacher retiring, and we will look at, a teacher moving into this classroom.
a computer teacher?
But it's not an additional teacher to the payroll.
No, I understand that, but is it the computer teacher position that's
Correct.
retiring? Okay, yeah, because
Yep.
I know, for some reason I was thinking there was some discussion about Spanish, that
There
we were
is.
going to be hiring a STEM teacher.
And wait, there's more. Absolutely.
Okay,
First,
wait,
Spanish moving forward.
but before you get to that one,
Yeah.
hold on. So then my other question is, and maybe you've already answered this along the way, the Project Lead the Way cost for that? What's that being covered with?
So the Project Lead the Way cost, we did go over in terms of the budget. If you,
You don't have to pull it up. Is this ESSERS that's being used for this? or
No.
no?
It is
It
not.
Okay.
And it is in the curriculum. It's in the
Okay,
curriculum
I do
tab.
remember us talking.
And we
about it.
also are applying for a grant to help fund that, but I think that's what with the grant is what we put in the budget.
Okay. All right, go ahead. I have another question after that.
So, yeah, so with Spanish, and we sat Mr. Funk, Mr. Page, Miss Epley, and the other Spanish teacher, the name escapes me right now, at the high school, Miss Petro, sat down about 2 months ago to discuss what the Spanish program looks like moving forward. So what they came up with, what we came up with was 8th grade, like we do this year, we'll have a full year Spanish course. So we have one class of students, 28 kids, that elected to take a full year Spanish. That will be taught by Miss Petro, I believe, correct? Mr. Petri, sorry. And she'll come down to the middle school and teach that class. 5th, 6th, and 7th grade, Dr. Epley is going to take her and her Spanish honor students and have them come down. We're going to create a schedule throughout the year to give 5th, 6th, and 7th grade the fundamentals that they would get in the Spanish course from the Spanish teacher over the last number of years. So they'll be getting hours for that, and they'll be coming down and mentoring and showing the 5th, 6th, and 7th grade the basics of what Spanish is and the fundamentals.
Going to be done as an internship, or like how would that?
Volunteer hours also, because Spanish National Honor Society has to accumulate so many volunteer hours. They currently do this to support the ELL programs, so that's one way to achieve.
Is there any concern if they don't volunteer? Like what happens?
The group that's something we can explore. I highly doubt the group is in the Spanish National Honor Society. They like coming down and working with the honor students.
Okay.
Yeah, we have time built in at the end of the day for 5th and 6th. 7th grade has the middle of the day, like a 30-minute period, and we're working on like our cafeteria. We can set up where we can have the students in there and split up and reach the different groups.
And how is it decided then which students of those 28 students can get into Spanish in 8th grade?
All of them will get that. If the 28 students or that applied, all of them got in.
Oh, I meant, but would you have a limit then as to the
I
number
think
of
28
students?
we talked about, and then we also talked about moving forward, like once the students apply for it or want to do it, checking their ELA and reading grades first, and kind of going in that. So if you have A's in ELA and reading, you get probably first dibs, and then so on and so forth. So right now, if you take Spanish 1 in 8th grade, you do not have to take reading because it takes place with that course in your schedule.
So you don't take reading in
They
oh,
take ELA. They don't take the reading part because they're taking the Spanish.
Okay.
They're seen as advanced in that area, so that's why they're in the Spanish course.
okay.
Always interesting at the middle school when you really almost look at it as two different schools, right? A 5 and 6 intermediate and a 7 and 8 as a junior high. Looking at it to try to, in terms of 8th grade, begin that element of giving more voice and choice in electives, especially when it comes to what we would traditionally call the specials. And those are really where we would start getting into electives and then allowing that choice to occur as we prepare for that schedule selection into 9th grade, 10th grade, et cetera, and building on those passions and those career pathways that students have. Because by the end of 8th grade, every student should have a career portfolio, a career plan that's designed for them as to, I know that's early, right? But what are your interests? What do you like versus dislike? And then for there to begin that process in 9th and 10th, 11th and 12th to begin to implement that career plan.
So this is my more, but this may not be the appropriate time to ask it. But I know I heard you say that the Black Hawk Foundation was going to be supplying some things. And I got to thinking about that in terms of other Black Hawk Foundation donations to the school to help fund whatever that might be, whatever. Where is the future maintenance of those programs taken into consideration once the Black Hawk Foundation has made their initial deposit for, like, somebody had said to me that the reason why the middle school media room was taken off of the thing was because the Black Hawk Foundation was supplying that money. But once that's put in place, we will have the financial burden to keep it going. Like, how do we manage those donations coming into the district if we don't know about them and what that might be a future budgetary constraint for us? I'm wondering if we should be looking at something that's an approval process or something by the board to be looking about whether, when we're getting donations from the Black Hawk Foundation that could have futuristic budgetary considerations for us, shouldn't we be approving that?
Sure, you certainly can. Anytime there's any gift of kind, and anytime there's a process of any teacher, I can bring them to you for consideration and approval moving forward. I have no problems with that. We looked at items that were in, and we've been waiting for 2 years on the middle school media center. That program had gone from a $55,000, what the design would look like, to try to replicate some of the equipment and scaffold some of that equipment to prepare students at the high school level, so they would get and be able to do an announcements and be a part of that announcement program. And then from there, it was scaffolded back, I believe, to about 12,000, to about 12,000, at which time the Black Hawk Foundation said they would be able to take that, approve that at their meeting, and then implemented that. In terms of maintenance on that equipment, I think it's like anything else. Equipment, obviously, there's always training that comes along with it. There's always implied warranties that come with equipment. But like anything, it breaks. And it will be looked at as, does it need to be replaced? Is there anything that's out there now that enhances it or is better to replace it? Or did technology move forward and no longer are you needed to do that type of announcement or announcements done now differently? And there's always an age expectancy, just like there is of buildings and anything else that's associated with that. In terms of the other element I mentioned with Vex Robotics, that was a last year purchase that was donated by the foundation in kind to a request, or what we would call a proposal written by our school librarian at both the middle and high school for those Vex Robotics. So it's taking a piece of equipment that's already in existence and then utilizing that into a future program and integrating that. So there's no additional costs. But yes, moving forward, I certainly will write that down and make sure that all foundation grants get approved by you before accepting those.
I actually just have a question that's kind of a piggyback off of this. So I saw in the, is it 5th and 6th grade, they're doing a robotics type of, so do you guys envision that that will potentially lead to maybe doing more with robotics and maybe like a BattleBot kind of club? And I don't know if they do something at the high school. I know in lots of schools that I've visited and other teachers that I've talked to that that's something that they do, and it's a great way for students to get into engineering and building and electronics and all of those types of things. So is that something you guys have as a future vision to be able to do that, at whether it's at the 7th and 8th grade level or into the high school level and doing all of that kind of stuff?
Absolutely.
I think that's great. Yeah. Just going through that whole design process, engineering process, you know, problem solving of, okay, it's failed, how do I fix it, how do I rebuild it, you know, being able to enter those types of things. I think that's great.
I'm not sure that I'm clear then on the teaching positions in the middle school. So if the Project Lead the Way is going to be housed in the computer specials, and I hear what you're saying about how we're going to be managing Spanish in the middle school, what will be happening with the Spanish teaching position that is currently in the middle school?
What we are proposing at this point, based upon these modules and looking at refreshing and still being able to offer 8th grade, so we're not eliminating Spanish or exposure to Spanish or languages, and still being able to have 8th grade take that foreign language here at the high school, we're looking at adding a secondary STEM teacher. It would not add an additional teacher, but it would look at that certification differently.
But what would they be doing?
They'd be doing elements of this also. So it'd be a two-teacher special, a two-teacher program.
Two modules for each grade, which will take a marking period each, which gives the students, like we talked about, that they get the flexibility. You call them electives in high school, really middle school, they weren't electives because you had to take them, right? There's only 5 of them, so you had to take them. So now you have the ability to take, well, I want to do art, I don't want to do the second step, I don't want to do robotics. They'd have a choice then. I want to do band, I want to do chorus, they'd have different choices then. To fill the 4 marking periods instead of just have to take these for 30 days no matter what.
So, sorry, one more question regarding Spanish. So prior to the revamping of the Spanish program, were there more students that desired Spanish, maybe not outside of this past year, that would not get Spanish, being able to take Spanish as a full year course? Like if you have a student that's a good science student, but their grades are not the A's in ELA or whatever, would they be prohibited from taking Spanish taught by a teacher in the middle school? Maybe the word prohibited isn't right, but I'm restricted.
I've been here 3 years. This is the first year edition that we actually gave the kids a choice. They didn't want to have to take Spanish. They could take computers, tech ed, facts, and art. And not that I'm saying anything bad about Spanish, but Spanish was the least chosen for most of the kids. That wasn't, I don't want to say it's not high demand, but of the kids that wanted the full year, all of them have gotten that, the 20 kids.
So,
If someone good at science, that'd be just a case-by-case basis there.
so you're seeing about a section
Right.
of students that could be taught differently by a teacher that's already in our district. So when we look at it, who and how can we best utilize the talent we have within our district?
Yeah, I was just thinking that in years past, I remember, and it could be before Mr. Black was there, where we had a large number of students taking Spanish in the middle school, to the point of it putting a burden almost on the high school, because they were coming in with Spanish 2 needs. And so I'm just wondering, like, if we're scaling back on the actual teachers that we're going to have being able to teach Spanish in the middle school, will that then limit the opportunities for students that want to take that first year of Spanish in the middle school?
I don't think it will, and Craig can attest this when we talk with the high school Spanish teachers, they have a lot of kids that went to Spanish too, but weren't nearly where they needed to be in Spanish too. They weren't prepared for that. So that's correct.
No, I hear what you're saying.
You're saying access. Is there going to be a limitation of access to curriculum based upon this new delivery model? And what I'm hearing is no, based upon how you would build the schedule for those students during that time in special, which would be designed exclusively for those 8th graders taking Spanish 1. Is that?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're not going to have a child that's really wants to take Spanish 1 and can't, because we don't have enough teachers to teach it anymore, because we're only going to have 1 class.
I think, we don't, ever since I've been here, we only ever have had 1 class for my 3 years, but if Mr. Fox and myself work well together, so there's 3 or 4 kids, and they only have 20 kids in first period up here at high school, I'm sure the 3 kids can get all of us up here, take Spanish first period, because our periods line up, and walk down to the middle school.
Yeah, I want to comment on that thought, because that is something that really, I think, just looking at these administrators right here, from elementary to middle to high school, have done a really good job of sharing and showcasing resources that just because, well, that's a high school program, or that's a middle school program, or no, you can't do that because of grade level, breaking that away and providing opportunities for students regardless of age, regardless of where that's located, because we're one campus and we've thought and needed, and it's something that needs to continue to happen. It makes me smile all the time when I see our students going down to the elementary school and walking and talking and saying, I'm on my way. Dr. Fox, I can't talk to you. I'm on my way to go see my little at the elementary school. They're depending on me. And breaking that down and just having that access as one campus is pretty powerful. And again, allowing us to do some things differently. And it's done differently because of our Spanish teachers here also at the high school saying, look, we can go down and we can also share our students to go down and have that ability to be able to share, showcase some of those student talents and those student excitement and expose them to what really the language acquisition is all about. And then also get that group that's ready, eager, and enthusiastic to take it in 8th grade and either walk up or the teacher comes down. And it's exciting to certainly be a part of that. And we've done that here as well, where we've had and continue to have a science teacher come down because of a pocket from the high school, comes down for 2 periods to be able to deliver science instruction to our students because of this bubble, rather than just hiring additional teachers, doing things differently and maximizing our current staff. And they've been awesome. They've been incredible, and thankfully, incredibly thankful for them. Any questions on like Project Lead the Way also? And it really does and can become this launching pad into the high school as well, connecting into some future tech ed components, as well as some of the electives already that are being taught with our computer sciences. It's really a well-developed curriculum throughout. And again, for us, being able to pick and choose, and while we build our own and incorporate, that continuation of drone technology, continuation of what is needed. What are those launching pad electives that our students are asking for? And what are our students that talk to us from post-secondary that said, hey, you really need to have this class because it would benefit? And those are the things that we try to reflect on and see what we can offer. All right. That was STEM at the middle school. We're going to skip over. Unfortunately, Mr. Quigley could not be here this evening. He was out working the track meet, but a family situation came up, and unfortunately, so we're gonna pause that secondary coach payroll update. He provided some information already to me, but I think it can wait until our May caucus to go over as well, and he spent some time reflecting on those comments from the last time, in which he's done a great job. So before we get into special education comprehensive plan, and one thing Mrs. Bressi is not going to do is go over each word of the comprehensive special education plan, where I'm going to ask Mr. Holmes to pass out kind of a summary sheet that looks at what our capital projects net loan analysis could be. So when we talk about analyzing and looking at if we arbitraged funds, what would that look like? Because I would want to see that visually too. Because we talk about, okay, what would that loan proceed look like in the interest rate? And then if we arbitrage and have the ability to arbitrage, right, what would that be up to 3 years? And what would some of that substantial look like right now based on current, these are today's rates of what we could do. So I'm going to turn it over to you for some analysis while I pass these out for you.
So what you have in front of you is a daily rate sheet from 2 of the organizations that we do invest money with. One is Pliget, Pennsylvania Local Government Investment Trust, and the other is, we call it PISLOF. And so the question was, or ask about, where would we be with our interest? And so on the screen, you will see that if we borrowed the money, we would have deposited in our account $14,880,000. And if you look at the Pliget rate sheet, we could invest today at 5.11%. So that would yield a 88 basis points spread between what we would owe and what we would receive. So, and that is a 365 day loan, or CD. So in the first year, could you go down to the end of the 8.8 and sum that total, please, on the right? So in the first year, we would net $121,000 in interest more that we've earned than what we would owe. So that's the opportunity for us to sort of get back those costs of originating that loan, that $120,000. Beyond that, any interest that we earn net, we have some ideas for some other uses for, but it's an opportunity for us to get some of those costs back. Opportunities that did not occur with the last couple of issues that the district has undertaken. Does that make sense, what is displayed and shown?
What interest rate was that, did you say?
So that's based on a 5.11. So the difference between the 5.11 and the 4.23 should come out to 88 basis points, I believe, if I calculated that correctly.
And why would you not look at the other different classes on like the Pliget? Is that what you were looking at, the Pliget? Is that where you got the 5.11?
Yes.
Like, why would you not look at, maybe I'm not understanding the difference between them, but,
I anticipated you asking this question.
did you?
I did.
Well, I'm glad I didn't let you down.
And so that's the longest term that we're guaranteed. We can take out a 365-day investment. So that's 5.11. So for the first year, we would be guaranteed the spread between the 5.11 and the 4.23. Are some of the other spreads better? Yes, they are. But when that 4 months ends, the 180 days ends, the 210, the 240, we don't know what the rate's going to be. So that is the conservative approach of the minimum that we would earn. I gave it the Mrs. Singley test.
Yeah, no, so, but there's a bonus question. If you get that right.
Oh, no.
You get extra points.
I didn't think about a bonus.
Extra credit. No, so if I'm looking over at like, I understand what you're saying about the 365. So that gives us the maximum amount of days that we know we can secure a given
Guaranteed.
rate.
Yes.
But when I'm looking up this, so the top ones, are they just, when they're saying 7-day yields? Like if you're at the CD purchase program, that goes down to 5.45% for
Yes.
365. Like why do we not look at that?
And I anticipated you asking that question.
Did
I
you?
did, yes.
You're on it.
So that 5.45, if you read the small print there, that's only up to the maximum that FDIC would insure.
Right.
So we would go to a bank and they would give it to us up to $250,000.
Okay.
But the problem with that is that's the best bank rate offered right now, and it wouldn't be for $15 million.
Right,
So
okay.
it would be staged at different levels, and they've assured me, because I asked that question, they assured me that if we got to the end of the 15 million, we'd be down in the 4s on our
Okay.
return.
So with the 5.11, we could invest all 15 million, no restriction.
Correct.
And it's okay because of the loan amount. And also with the Cumberland Perry Area Career and Technical Center, we would not do a full payment. We would do a July payment and a November payment because it can be broken into two. That way we continue to invest the funds while we have the opportunity to do so.
So if you notice in the use of funds column, there are 2 payments listed in there for $692,000. That is the Cumberland Perry payment broken out between July and November.
Where are you at?
In that column, uses
Oh, I
of
see it. I'm
funds.
sorry. So even with those monies going out to CPCTC, you're still anticipating a net interest gain of, or interest revenue,
Yes,
if you
that-
will, of 120,000.
That spreadsheet takes into consideration the ending balance for each month and goes through an interest calculation, 360, and calculates the interest, yes.
Okay. So when you see when it gets down to 165, which is your net interest on there, 165,000 change, and then you have loan origination costs of 120,000.
Would you scroll down a little bit?
Is there more? There's more.
And just the net interest earnings. So the first 12 months is sort of a guarantee, and then I dropped the basis points that we would earn, the net basis points to 0.65, and then just kind of use that as a number that I think we would safely be able to get.
So, but I guess what I'm asking is, you're subtracting off $120,000 for loan origination costs. So we're offsetting over and above the interest that we have to pay, but because we have loan origination costs of 120,000, we're really only netting 45,000 for that year.
That's correct.
Okay. That's not as good as the 120. Sorry. But
And I'll go back to one of that 45,000, my goal or ask, and your ask was to develop some type of, again, more developed capital plan before we start to be able to implement funds on A, B, C, or D. And that was to go out and look and hire an independent engineer to be able to review buildings, A, B, review sites for any future development, which would give us kind of a good idea, and not just review a site, but actually do a study on that site to see if it makes sense and what that would look like, and come back and be our engineer of record to work with us, not try to necessarily, and again, no disrespect to any presenter we've had previously, but to work with us, not sell us.
so you're saying that that $45,000 you could use for that purpose?
That would be my ultimate goal, yes.
Okay. So just big scheme things. First year, we borrowed $15 million. We would be at zero in terms of arbitraged money that would be able to offset some of our budgetary deficit if we used the $45,000 for the engineer.
Yes, but I mean, there's also the option of taking 180 days at 5.41. So, then we're looking at 113 basis points or 108 basis points. So, I mean, there's different opportunities there. I kind of took the worst case scenario of what it would be. So it potentially could be much more.
Right, and we also have to consider what they're talking about with interest rates, right? So if interest rates are going to possibly move down, or with the Fed changing things, then that the interest rates for the good side, the good interest, has the potential to go down as well. So I understand why you wanted to maybe lock something for a year, because you would know that we were guaranteed that for a year. But after that year's over, we don't really know where that number is going to fall compared to what the interest that we have on the loan itself.
That's correct. Our exposure would be 6 months of a potential where the interest that we pay is greater than the interest that we earn.
Right. We wouldn't be able to, because it would be callable, non-callable for another 6 months beyond this.
Correct.
Okay.
Any questions on that information that Mr. Holmes presented? The plan certainly has been and will continue to be, if I hear no objections, to place that resolution for approval of the interest rate and the bank loan proposal on April 16th's board agenda. It is not on for right now, and I purposely left it off for you to hear the information and for you to tell me yay or nay if you want it to go on.
Do we have to yay or nay on the exact bank that they're recommending? Because I kind of would like to digest that a little bit more, or, you know what I mean, when you're asking for that now.
No, I don't think I need it right now, this second, for any immediate purpose. I just want to make sure, we need to get back to the financial advisors so we can begin that process of, there's a lot of drafting of paperwork, of course, that comes in, but the bank selection will be a part of drafting that paperwork, if I'm correct, Mr. Holmes? Yes. So in order to be prepared for April 16th, we do need to make a decision as to which of these banks, or any of those, that we want to, sooner rather than later.
Would it be better once he gets back with the information about S&T Bank? Because there's information that he was still waiting for from S&T Bank, to have that information because of the deposit yield.
Absolutely, and we can
Funded,
send that out.
whatever.
We can't, technically, there's no voting, but we will send that information out for informational purposes. And what I will do is kind of make a recommendation as to which part, or we can put a couple on the agenda as well, where you could therefore choose which one you would like on the agenda.
That might not be a bad idea, given that we've got board members that aren't here, that they haven't even seen some of it, and it is a big deal that we're looking to borrow a lot of money. Maybe that would allow a little bit more discussion on which one we want to do. That's just my thought. I mean, but
Okay. All right. Now we're going to jump into the Special Education Comprehensive Plan, part of a lot of different versions of the comprehensive plan, which occurs in the Future Ready Comprehensive Planning portal. So there's a tremendous amount of reports that we submit on a regular basis to the Pennsylvania Department of Education, all of which flow into our comprehensive plan, which we'll begin that process of working on this summer, which is exactly what it is, very comprehensive. So there's the Chapter 339 plan, which is our guidance advisory plan. And then there's, of course, the element of all the other plans, the new teacher induction, or our induction plan that flows underneath it, as well as special education plan. So, Mrs. Bressi?
Thank you. Good evening. As Dr. Fox said, I will not go through all 67 pages of the Special Ed Comprehensive Plan. But just to give you a little bit of background, school districts must submit the special education plan every 3 years to the Department of Education, and it does have to be reviewed every year. Included in that is not only our professional development, our training, it also goes through any type of monitoring that we've had, as well as all of our special education data that we provide to the state every year. So as part of it, we do, as I said, we outline all of the trainings that we've provided to our teachers. We do all of our professional development as far as from our paras as well as our teachers. We also break down how we are providing services to our districts and our out-of-districts placements, as well as we actually have to provide them with the location of all of our special education rooms, including measurements and for square footage purposes, as well as all of our teachers broken down by their caseloads, as well as the amount of services that they're providing, whether they're providing, how many they're providing itinerant, how many they're providing supplemental to. A big piece of the plan, though, is indicators that are determined based on our compliance monitoring that is done by the state. This year, we have been taken off of all indicators, so there is nothing at this point, cross our fingers, that'll continue, that the state is monitoring us for. So the plan is posted on our website. It needs to be posted for 28 days. It is currently posted on our front page of our website and will be submitted by May 1st to the state, and then they will get back to us with any questions or concerns. Does anybody have any questions?
Before we get into the budget update thing, would it be possible for you to send us the spreadsheet that Mr. Holmes had with the example of how the interest, because unless we don't have that like in a packet or anything, do we? Okay, just like afterwards, like in an email or something like that.
I do want to go back real quick before we do dive into our continuation of review. So just so I understand correctly, looking at adding to the agenda, there are 6 different bank proposals. If I could just bring your attention to those real quick, because I need some direction. I don't think we want all 6 certainly on the agenda, or the agenda will be 18 pages and we'll get lost in this. I think there are some we can take a look at together and honestly eliminate just due to interest rates right now, if that's okay.
Yeah, I could probably make it quicker than that.
I think let's go from the bottom to the top. I think F and B, unfortunately, due to interest rates, is stricken. Capital One, due to interest rates, stricken. I think,
I wouldn't necessarily, that would be stricken because of interest rate, but more so because it's not callable for 3 years.
yeah, sorry. We'll just strike it.
Yeah. I would like to consider the S&T Bank one.
Yeah.
Depending on what we get back in terms of numbers, just because it is callable at any time.
Sure.
And if interest rates do look like they're moving in the next year in terms of the arbitrage ability of that money,
It's total flexibility.
it gives us that, we're not in that 6-month window then of kind of holding our, crossing our fingers.
Then I would go with TD Bank, option A.
Yes.
Those are my
Yeah, I think
two
those
in
two
opinion.
would be, yeah.
Is that okay with everybody? TD Bank, option A, and S&T Bank.
I mean, we don't have, the downside is we don't have, they blew out option A of the TD Bank because that was their recommendation. We don't really have what that looks like in terms of how the 4.4 changes things. Do you know what I mean?
Correct.
I don't know I don't know how much of a hassle that would be for Raymond James to just do that for us as well, just so we could have the two to betting it's probably not a lot for them to do it.
We can certainly go back
Do
and
you know
ask
what I
them.
mean? If it's too much, then maybe not, but I'm just thinking it might, that way we can have an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, just a comparison sheet from option A, from that one that they proposed to a S&T Bank. And how about I ask them for that only until we, let us see what we get from the bank interest rates. Because if the bank interest rates are honestly not where it yields, and it yields a negative return, I don't know if going through that exercise makes much prudent sense.
Yeah, I think the only other advantage of the S&T is that it's not
Callable.
an indicative rate, so it won't move. We know it's
Right.
going to be at that 4.4. But at least between now until we secure the loan.
Correct.
Yeah.
The 4.23 is locked once we lock in,
Correct. But we're not locked in yet.
but we're not locked in
Right.
yet. Okay. Thank you very much. That was super helpful. All right, let's transition into our budget update. So in terms of budget update, we're going to continue with working through some of our areas. And I do have a great team in front of me who's going to help to go through some of those areas and questions that we may have. We have really 3 major areas to go through tonight. 1110, which is instruction. And when you look at it, it is our largest area of the pie, if you will. And of course, we have the business office that encompasses a lot of our insurance and other elements within that. and we have buildings and grounds when we look at upkeeping our facilities to the best of our ability there as well. So we have a good team here ready to rock and roll. So I'm going to make a couple notes before I forget on something else.
Sorry, I didn't have my microphone on. When we were looking at like the software services, I have a question about the Microsoft Office licensing. Yeah. So that was what we were talking about before when we talked about maybe getting rid of it but not getting rid of it. Right. So is that Microsoft license for staff and students? Like, does that go through the whole district? Because it was brought to my attention that staff was being asked to move everything from Microsoft. And so I was wondering why that was happening.
Well,
if we have
in
the
terms of
license.
asking to move over everything from Microsoft, we want things not to be locally hosted and locally saved. On a hard drive on a computer, on a computer and desktop, that's difficult to find. We want things to be migrated over so work production can be saved. So if an individual does depart from us or moves in a different position, we have, because it's still subject to us and its workplace productivity, to be able to be given and shared. I think the shareability of Google for certain functionalities doesn't mean we stop using Microsoft Word, and it doesn't mean we stop using certain other features, such as Excel, which we use quite often. We're asking to migrate with the storage of documents and the sharing of documents. You could take a Word document and transfer that document into a Google Doc relatively easy.
Oh, I think it was kind of presented to me that it was not going to be available after July. So that's why I wanted to make sure that this.
And if any employee has a
licensing.
question on that, they should direct those questions certainly to me.
No, and the only reason I was bringing it up is because we had talked about removing it.
Yeah.
But I knew it was in the budget, so I just wanted to be clear. I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't just for students and that it was available for staff. So I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't two different messages being sent out.
All right, taking a look at 1110, we'll drive into, at the beginning, it is elementary going first, which makes sense since they're the first building in our sequence. So we're not anticipating any additional staff here at the elementary school. We constantly and continually will look at numbers, and if we need to make a move, we certainly reserve the right with communicating with our teachers. If we need one to add an additional kindergarten teacher or move one from grade 2 to grade 1, grade 3 to grade 4, those types of rotations that occur within certification. Line number 39 is our English as an English language learner teacher. It's important to note that ELL is a program, and that person, staff member and professional, serves the entire district. But because their primary office is elementary, that's where we classified, but it really could be split to all three. Line number 49 and 50, I will take this as a moment to talk again. Cyber charter reform needs to happen. Cyber charter reform is well overdue. If cyber charter reform in House Bill 1422, which continues to get momentum, and if you get a chance, please reach out once again to Representative Stambaugh as well as Senator Rothman, as in any other constituents within it, to ask them to support House Bill 1422. What House Bill 1422 is, it doesn't eliminate cyber charter payments. We're not saying cyber charter schools are not an option for some students at all. What we're saying is it will level the playing field at $8,000 for a student. What that will do is level the playing field and allow for an actual budgetary number to be provided, and for us, honestly, would be close to a $2 million savings. $2 million savings. And as we get into deficit, it'll be important for you to note that number. All right, I'll stop talking about that and go into supplies at the elementary
But before
school.
you do that, so this is our charter school, cyber charter school tuition? It seems like the elementary school is really low. Do we only have one student there?
Well, elementary school, how it's broken down is broken down a little different. It's not necessarily broken down the way we would break down grade levels. So if you just added those, sorry, I'm muted. If you added those two numbers together, that would be cyber charter school tuition overall for our district. We kind of broke it down just by numbers historically, but no, it is 2.41750, and that's only regular education. Special education was in another category. We're close to $3.7, $3.8 million, I would say, if I'm accurate, in cyber charters. Does that sound?
Yes.
Okay, I'm still just, knowing that there is that set tuition fee that we pay that's dictated to our school, I'm just a little confused as to why it's broken down like this. If we have elementary school students in cyber charter, why don't we just take that number and multiply it by whatever the tuition is for the regular ed student for the budget? I don't know why it's labeled elementary and secondary, and the numbers are so vastly different. It
Do you
looks
have the
misleading.
ability to break it down and show us the number for the cost for elementary, the number of students? I mean, we don't need to know the number of students, but the number for what the cost is for elementary age students, middle school, 5 to 8.
If you don't want to,
and
if
high
you don't want to
school.
do that, that's fine. I don't like it looking like we're only paying $17,000 for elementary school students if that's not really the case. If you want to just give it one number and just
Right,
say
we'll
cyber
just get rid of the
charter,
breakdown.
whatever. Does that make sense? I think it looks misleading.
We do need to have a breakdown. I'm going to back now and look and see what it was historically, but we do need it for determining the cost of tuition per pupil, so it has to be broken down for the state. But I'm going to look now and see if I can find the historical.
Okay.
So yes, those two categories could certainly move, but I think that's a fairly, as well as with the special education cyber charter, those numbers are.
And was the other cyber charter special education listed under special education, or where will that be? Because I don't remember it there. Was it there? Where else will that be found?
I'll take a look.
Okay.
While I'm looking, feel free to peruse through the supply category.
For line 41, it says instructional aids 310,429. How many aids are we talking about? Do we have any idea?
Yeah. Those would just be title aids.
There are Title I aids, there are lunch aids, there are recess aids, there are aids as well, and that is looking at all of the supports and staffing throughout, assuming that we are 100% totally staffed That has not been the case. Our lunch aides have been a great addition and resource of providing and allowing our school counselors to not necessarily be in there all the time. They do go in there and provide an additional person, as well as recess aides, which also help. And they've done a great job of building relationships with students too. So if you're interested in any of those positions out there, please certainly reach out to us because they are fun. You can get a couple hours a day, be flexible in it, come, hang out with the students, play with the students at recess, provide a safe environment for them. And in lunch, you get to walk around and talk with them. You get to see and hang out and open up a lot of juice boxes. You get pretty good at that, especially the Capri Suns.
Currently, we only have one Title I aide. We usually staff 2. And then right now we have roughly, I think, five or six recess or lunch aides that we have. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
It might not be a bad idea, though, given the way we listed aides in other sections of the budget by a parenthesis number. You know, like what are we budgeting for there, even if they're not full, just so that we kind of have an idea of what that number is. Is that what you were kind of wondering, like
Yeah,
total?
I mean, I'm doing division, right? So how many are we getting
Well,
for that?
and that's
But also-
benefits. Oh, no, they're not benefited, are they? Okay, so there wouldn't be benefits with that. Yeah, I see what you're asking.
So that's more than just in classroom. This is recess aides, this
Yes.
is behavioral.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I just have a question, like on some of these, like it looks like on some of the individual, and obviously it seems like maybe some of your teachers went through and they each gave their individual and this was put on here. So like crayons might be on here multiple times, or, so do you guys try to then purchase it in bulk, even though it's listed on here, because it may be cheaper to buy it in bulk if there's 4 teachers who want a 12-pack of crayons or a 16-pack of crayons instead of them each ordering it individual, and it's more expensive when they buy it in smaller amounts versus if you buy it in larger amounts?
Yeah, and so each grade level also kind of does it differently how they've historically ordered. Some like doing it, as you said, individual teachers like ordering their individual items. Some are just ordering for the grade level, but I think that's something we're looking into is how we can buy in bulk as well. So we're seeing however many crayons they want, however many pencils, things like that we can get in bulk to make it cheaper, but just getting their rough estimates that they would like. Yeah.
Anybody have anything for elementary or want to move on to middle school? All right. You want to pass that on to Jason? Oh, Ken, sorry. Sorry. He's delegating over there.
And at the middle school, we don't have recess or lunch aides. We just have, I think right now we have 7 aides. So we have, all of ours are grade level, a life skills room, emotional support, and we have a library aide too, because Mrs. Davis goes back and forth. And Mrs. Walburn, you'll see the same thing here. We have like 82 different types of pencils, so obviously put that together. And one people wants taekwondo runner pre-sharpened, so we'll just make sure. So what we had this year differently, and as Mr. Holmes could tell you, we had each teacher put down what they wanted, but obviously we'll put that together and make it one order.
Are those new calculators, or did we dispose of old ones, or what?
So fifth grade have, like, they're 4 or 5 years old now. They're starting to get dots, so you can't even see the numbers. We're trying to get them. So last year we ordered some from 8th grade. We're trying to get everybody with the same calculator, so as they move up, they know the different functions of the calculator. They can use on the PSSA, so those will be new ones for 5th grade.
Okay, so this
It's not
might
just
be a
one-
recurring expense for a couple years, but not
Eighth grade's
not
good.
indefinitely.
Might be 6th grade next year, so
Okay.
not, yeah.
All right.
They should last us, because they're pretty good quality.
Well, for that price, it better be.
Oh, is that what it said? Oh, yeah, no, it's, I think, what was there, 150 maybe?
I want that one.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
You better do my taxes for me.
Yeah. If you see our art there, yeah. We have a new art teacher this year too. That's why art's not broken down as extensive. So next year will be a lot. So she was just hired after the budget was kind of due to Mr. Holmes. So she's at 6,000. We'll get her to break that down more in depth for you guys next year as to what she's actually using. I think Mrs. Fisher's budget last year was about 7,000 or 8,000. So 6,000 is what we kind of settled on for that one. Mr. Ward and myself too are going to do a lot of cleaning this summer, and I'm sure we know there's some supplies that are on that are hanging around the school somewhere, so a lot of that stuff we can get rid of too. I mean, we got pencil sharpeners hanging out we can find for them and stuff like that. We have a couple classrooms that aren't used currently, so we can obviously take the pencil sharpeners out of there and repurpose it. So.
I don't know if I had a dream about this or this was talked about in a previous budget meeting. It'd be bad if it was a dream. But did we talk about, I don't know if I was thinking about this in terms of my school, where they had a supply place for the school district? Would that be more economical? Where you have construction paper and you have folders and you have or whatever, and then teachers could just.
Yes and no.
Okay.
It really depends.
Did I not have that dream? I know
No,
we
you
did not
didn't have that
Okay.
dream. Yes, you did. Actually, you did. You 100% did. I didn't. We never talked about that at all, did we? No, just tease. No, that to a certain degree, you do want to keep some supplies on hand, but you don't want to have the next Staples because, again, management of what's needed versus what I have versus what I can use and I think it's also a really great program that could be managed by some students in orders and being able to fulfill orders and picking and delivering. I think that way might be a really good program to house. And there's some things we can do in terms of that, but it needs to be, I think, managed to a certain degree.
Yeah, on that note, Mr. Warden is talking about, we have a double door storage. Like if you look at there, some construction paper isn't even the right color anymore because they ordered so much of it. But we're looking at clean that out and have our life skills students with Mr. Henry. Maybe if a teacher needs something, they could place an order with them and they would deliver it to that classroom. So maybe have a closet with the basic stuff, pencils, paper clips, stuff that doesn't go bad. Like construction paper kind of goes bad if it fades or whatever, but just stuff that won't go bad and have those students be in charge of right now they deliver the mail to the teachers and stuff like that. So just getting them more involved in the school as well.
I mean, you could still manage it in terms of this teacher budgeted for 100 pencils, and if they get their 20, they take 20 off of their allotment. But it would be able to, like Marcy was saying, being able to get everything purchased at the same time in a bulk kind of thing. I don't know.
Well, and I think to Leanne's point, I kind of like the idea because, as you had mentioned, as rooms don't get used or as teachers leave, you don't have unused resources just sitting in a classroom that then all of a sudden, you go into a classroom and now all of a sudden you have stuff and you're like, oh, wow, look, here we have a whole skid of paper and I'm being sarcastic, but Like, you don't have all these things that then are sitting there that now we've purchased like multiple over. I think it gives you a one-stop kind of clearinghouse to really know, here's our resources and here's what we have, and then you're not replacing things that you don't really need to replace. Certainly agree with you, Dr. Fox, that, there needs to be some kind of level of management that, people don't want to have to run to, somewhere to get staples. Like, they can have a certain level of things. But I think, as you've pointed out numerous times, the beauty of the fact that we are all on one campus, it's not like somebody has to drive, 20 or 30 minutes for some of those districts. It really is a short walk across the campus if there's something if it's housed in one central location that somebody doesn't have, if we do it as a district versus even at a building level. I mean, some things for the district to consider.
Any other questions for middle school? And we'll take a drive now up the hill to the high school. Absolutely.
What are new ELA social studies teacher supplies? Oh, sorry, 766. No, it says it's under supplies. So what kind of supplies? Like, is that just for? Okay, so that's just for them, like, to get. Okay, all right.
Yeah, since they weren't a part of the budgeting process, to allow the chance if there's something that as a supply or a consumable or something they wanted to order that they weren't a part of.
Okay, I
that would
wasn't
allow
thinking
them
of
to.
it that way. Now I understand.
The first thing to do is go to the classroom, see what's in there.
In there, yeah.
And like Mr. Connor, our social studies, so I'll probably bring stuff. Depending on when it is, so.
The first time I read it, I wasn't thinking of it that way, so I was like, what is that? Thank you.
All right, let's have some fun with the high school. Taking a look through. We'll see our teachers and salaries. There's an assumption, certainly, of high school aides that we would be full staffed. Unfortunately, we continue to do our best. And we do have available positions that are there as well. Same with high school substitutes. We still need substitutes. So if you have a bachelor's degree or you're coming out of college and you would like the opportunity to substitute, we are open for business on that end. Come talk with us. We would like to have you for a couple days or for as many days as you really want.
Mr. Funk, 1065 and 1066, explain those chaperone things to me. Is that just like their tickets for when they go to the mock constitutional convention and the A-Push class trip? Or like, how are we funding the kids go, but now we have like a line item in here for the chaperones to go? I'm not quite sure I understand.
Looking at that 250.
1065, line 1065 and 1066, 250 and 250. Just curious.
150, and they could be, let me find it on mine.
Like, I don't see a line item on there for the A-Push class trip that we pay for the field trip. So why do we have a line on there for 250 to pay for a chaperone for the class trip? But I'm also a little dense, so.
Right.
See, he agreed with that.
Not having that right in front of me. The AP class trip 250 could be the cost to offset chaperone going. The trip's mainly paid through fundraising, but it also could be coverage. I don't know if that has the substitutes for the AP trip on there. I'm looking quick.
There's substitutes for field trips listed up higher.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds like we're paying money for a chaperone.
And we would if they go to chaperone. We're not having them pay their own way. If we need people to go, we would have to offset the costs.
So I think what you're saying is we don't pay chaperones. You're not saying, hey, chaperone A, we're paying you $250 to go along on the trip.
No.
What we're saying is if you're chaperoning, you shouldn't incur a financial debt by volunteering your time to go, or thank you for your time and taking off work. We're going to cover tickets or the ticket admission, if I'm accurate in saying that.
I agree,
I
but
don't-
I'm kind of wondering if we're fundraising to cover the cost of the trip, why wouldn't we just fundraise a little extra
Okay.
to cover the cost of
I got
the-
into the
chaperone?
budget sheets, which
Yeah.
I have from the direct teachers. The way they were written up in the social studies, chaperones for these, they're considered $125 for a substitute to cover the teacher to go, and the same with the other one. It was 2 days for the push trip, $125 each for $250. So those are actual substitute costs for the chaperones going.
Yeah, that should be renamed then.
Yeah, so it's just named weird.
Yes.
Because up above it says substitute for field trip, so it's basically substitute for that
It's
trip.
substitute for the chaperone going on the field trip.
Wait, what? It's a substitute for the what?
For the chaperone, so Mr. Shepler.
Oh,
that
yeah,
is
yeah,
paying
I
for-
see what you're, yeah, right, I understand. It's a substitute.
Because he's
It's
chaperoning the
substitutes.
trip, it's
Yes,
to
I
bring
get
in
it.
a sub for him when he chaperones. Yeah.
Because I know, the reason why I was saying that it didn't sound right for the chaperones is because I know what that 8-push trip costs, and it was more than $250.
Yes.
Right, so I didn't think it would cover a chaperone. But it sounds more likely it's covering the substitute. So, I wouldn't say substitute for chaperone. I would say substitute for the 8-push class trip. I think we would understand that because you have substitutes like Jonathan said up above for field trips. Because I think when you say substitute for chaperone, it sounds like, I don't know, it sounds like we're substituting for the chaperones. It's,
Sounds like a substitute chaperone.
yeah. And I know there's a lot of parents that go on that. They pay their own way to go. You do, right? Yeah.
All right, kind of moving through high school a little bit. Seeing some supplies.
On the high school, why do we separate some travel out? So we have travel high school, but then up here for field trips, we have some travel up here. So, like, how do we differentiate that?
That travel, the PMEA would be for the teacher to travel, where the field trips are
Is
the.
student travel?
Yes.
Okay, that makes.
Line item 1076 seems very low. What's wrong? Is that wrong?
Yeah, I have many comments. I was going to make those smart. But
Oh, no, go right ahead. I'm like.
Yeah, travel to transition healthcare by school van, it would cost more than $2.
$2.
I mean.
And really, when we're looking at school van and transportation,
Yeah.
what we're referencing is going to be the fuel associated with it. Since we do have our own school vans, it's really at that point fuel. So really what we're breaking down is even costs associated, and we already have fuel in certain areas as well into the budget. So when we look at it, no, it's not $2, but it certainly is not $2,000. And it's one of those elements.
So it's
It's
listed.
an electric vehicle.
It's listed as, it's listed as 4 miles at 56 cents a mile for $2.24. Jeremy Brokus.
So it is. All right. I mean, really what that is doing right now and what you're seeing is the immense detail associated with this budget. I mean, we're getting down into pencils and glass stirring rods at 105 by 155 millimeters. I mean, it is getting down into what you had asked for, an immensity of detail. Any further questions on high school?
There are some individual teachers listed on the high school as just like line 120 or 1254, 1255, 1256, and 1257. That it seems like there's 4 individual, I'm assuming those are teachers' last names. That's, yeah, 1254. What did I say?
Yeah, those are supplies associated with the social studies department. Social studies did not break down their supply budget.
Okay.
And that number classifies that is a supply for that particular teacher. Correct?
Yes.
$1288 is going to be science department. As well as $1293 is science consumables, and those are chemicals and different lab mechanisms that they may need in order to be able to do labs throughout the year as they kind of work through different assessments that they may see that's fitting based upon their class size and based upon the units of study that they do. And a lot of times, my understanding, right, Mr. Funk, that we don't want to keep a tremendous amount of chemicals on hand. We keep the chemicals on hand that's needed and order them in the limitations that's needed as well.
That is correct.
What about 1323, A&P coloring workbook for $3,300? Is that something they can do on an iPad potentially?
No.
No?
No, I will tell you, that's when I first heard that she was going to be working with the coloring book, like I was like, really? It's a very powerful educational tool. I find them the learning of what they have to do from the body systems. It's really helpful because they actually have the color coding helps them to memorize and stuff, and a lot of it is memorization. So I think that's valuable.
Mr. Funk.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Mr. Funk, could you explain the Friday free-for-all with consumer science, family consumer science?
We prefer to call it a Friday free cook, not a free-for-all. But basically, on the culinary classes, we provide the groceries for the curriculum-based cooking, but Mr. Pop and Ms. Pedrick occasionally have like Friday free cooks, or if students want to supplement during a challenge, they can bring in their own food that we're not supplementing But for the curricular cooks, we provide that. But often on Fridays, they might have a free cooked breakfast, or we sort of give the students to apply the skills they have, but they supply the extra stuff.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Shrimp at 8 a.m. in the morning is not the best, but it happens.
All depends on what time you get up, right?
Yeah.
All right, that was instruction, which takes and is one of our largest category. Let's go ahead and drive down to tuition reimbursement and staff professional development. That's going to be 2271, line number 250 on the back page of the overall budget. Should be in the gray or light gray shaded area. So we do budget for, we do an estimate, of course. When we get tuition, there's a process for our members of the collective bargaining agreement to apply for credits. So they have to apply for credits around this time, saying I'm interested in taking, up to 12 credits. It's got to be in an approved, accredited program, and that program has to be a part of a master's program, and it's specified under the collective bargaining agreement. So we budget for that tuition reimbursement. We also budget for staff professional development, and that helps for us to provide for any instruction necessary for our paras, our aides, provides for that instruction as well. And we do have some tuition agreements with some local schools as well to give a discounted rate. York College has been a great partner with us. All right, let's go into 2510, which is business office. Taking a look at 2510, you're going to see some elements here throughout this budget, throughout this proposal, that there are elements in here that take care of the entire district, of course. Salaries, you're going to see one on line number 5, which is one new professional for the office. For the last 3 years I've been here, and then looking back historically at our audits, it has been continual since we've had a previous audit firm, and then the one we've had, and then our most recent has said we were understaffed in the business office for delineation of responsibilities. So at this point, especially as you mentioned bulk purchasing and looking at the best pricing, this individual would help us to ensure that we get the best pricing, bulk pricing, and help us within the business office with the multiple and additional functions that are ever necessary to be able to maintain and support all of the operations within the district.
Is this salaries and benefits?
Yes.
Yeah, that's not listed on there. But so you're saying line number 5 is a new hire?
That is correct.
And give me the reason for that again?
Sure. Multiple reasons. First reason is it came out of, oh goodness, let's say 3, 4, 5, 7+ years of audit reviews, that delineation of responsibilities amongst business office. Another element is we see the ever-increasing responsibilities amongst the staff of 4, really 3 within the floor, to help with all of the immense responsibilities in terms of not just preparation for audit, but the purchasing. And if we can get somebody with an interest in purchasing, we believe we can help procure the best price for items here within the budget, as well as bulk pricing in controls, internal controls and operations. Did I do a good job?
Yes, there are some, there's some things that we need to work on. The previous year's audit had 12 material weaknesses. We're down to 2, but in order to keep going and to help get rid of them, there's some other things, additional steps that we need to take. And certainly segregation of duties, internal controls is part of it. We also have some additional things like grant writing and reconciliations and different things that we would like to have someone to be able to support what we do. The ladies in the office work incredibly hard, and I would say they're maxed out at what they can do. And so additional person would be beneficial for many reasons, and also do a variety of functions.
What would you be looking for? I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry, John.
I was just going to say, not necessarily a deal breaker for me, but on all the other sections, we have staff sort of listed out by title. And this one, for some reason, we have a grouping, business office staff. I don't know if we'd want to list those out by title or not. I mean,
Sure, I can do that. I'll just tell you what the three are now, but then I will break it out. We have someone who's in charge of transportation and accounts payable. We have someone who's accounts receivable and real estate taxes, and then we have someone for payroll. And then I'll also have the HR coordinator there as well. But I can break those out.
So you have somebody that does accounts payable and you have somebody that does accounts receivable. So you have somebody that's doing both your revenue and your expenses. How do you see adding this new position? Are you going to divide that besides just doing the purchasing, that you're going to have that additional, or are they going to take something off of the people who are doing payable and receivable to give them more time to be able to do that? Because you have your delineation there between your payable and your receivable to meet that delineation.
So the other areas that I mentioned, they'll probably stay with those main functions, but there are a number of other areas. For example, food service. We don't have anyone with a food service designation other than myself as the school food authority representative. But there's a tremendous amount of time that is spent on food service, collecting the money, working with the food service staff. So there's different areas that need a lot of assistance that we sort of, who's available, who's the next person up that can handle this kind of thing. It would be nice to be able to say, okay, this is more of a specialized that just you're going to handle. We have the other responsibilities, we just list the main ones.
What would be the, it's late. I can't think of what? Thank you. Like, what would you be looking for this person, and what would be the predicted salary if you carved out their benefits? What are you looking to pay them?
Probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 50,000, and their qualifications, we'd certainly want to look for someone who had an accounting degree. At present, I'm the only person with an accounting degree. We do have one young lady who's working on an accounting degree. It's important to have that frame of reference when you're looking at numbers, not just to process a transaction repeatedly, but is this the right transaction? Is it being handled properly? Is it being classified properly? So those are the kind of things that I would like to look for someone with an accounting degree.
Is it reasonable to think you're going to be able to hire somebody with an accounting degree of $50,000 a year?
I believe so. Probably. I just want that base of knowledge.
Yeah.
And
No,
really-
I don't disagree with you. I'm just trying to think, is it realistic to think you're going to get somebody with an accounting degree for $50,000 a year? I don't know what the market is for that right now, but
I think it's possible to,
Okay.
yes. Not someone with 5 to 10 years of experience, but someone new who wants to be in a school system and work in not-for-profit accounting. I hope so.
okay.
You'll see line number 36 being removed from there. Line number 36 was replicated from another area, so we just wanted to strike that through. Line number 48, you'll see an increase in electricity. The discussion, we need to come up, our electricity agreement, that historic rate that we've talked about in a lot of depth here and in great detail, will end in December. So we continue to look at where and when is the best time to lock in and how long will we lock in. And again, it's kind of like trying to forecast a lot of different elements. There is no really great time, and we continue to look and research as to when the best time will be to lock in. And do you lock in for a short term versus the long term? It's all variable, so we continue to try to see where we're currently at.
Do you have any numbers right now where it's at? Or have you, I mean, and how many you're saying you've been kind of monitoring it?
Just been kind of monitoring where it is. We have not.
Because I know mine went down. I'm saving quite a bit this year.
Nice.
I'm happy.
So as we talked about in the past meetings, there was an increase in electricity costs, and we couldn't figure out where that was coming from. So we brought in some gentlemen working with Mr. Howell, Dr. Fox, and myself from HB McClure. And what we did was we reset all of the buildings to a start time and an end time. What do we have? We used to have like 40-some different schedules of rooms and zones that would go on and off at different times. So we've reset that. And what we've seen is that we've actually started to have reductions. So for the month of March and the month of April, we've had reductions in our energy consumption and usage, and our bills have actually come down over previous years. So we're going to continue to monitor that. We've been trying to determine, where and why was our utility usage, electric usage increasing. And so we think by resetting that, having a start time and a finish time to the day, that's been helping us out.
Do you have a ballpark of what the reduction was in a month? Like, are we talking $1,000? Or are we talking $10,000?
I do have that.
Surprised you didn't expect that question from me, Mr.
It's
Holmes.
enough to pay for that van mileage
The
transportation.
$2.
Okay, so we had March bill from 2023 was $39,313, and March of this year was $32,666.
So that's because we're in a fixed rate, we know that that's just the savings you're experiencing based on that adjustment that was done.
Yes, well, we
It
believe
wasn't like
that's,
a-
we
yeah.
believe that's what it was. And actually, the degrees of temperature it was colder this March than it was last
Yeah,
March.
so that's good. Okay.
So I guess the follow-up on that question that Dr. Fox had started is, when is the best time for us to lock in? And because it's anyone's guess of what the rates will do. I know that some people had mentioned that possibly with the elections. So we're looking for any guidance that anyone would like to provide.
To looking out in the markets. And, we certainly gather information that comes from advisors all over when it comes to utilities. You look at the price, obviously, of petroleum. You will look at the price of natural gas. Those also are predictors when it comes to the utility market as well.
My understanding is the trends are going down right now, so I don't know that I would necessarily lock in yet. I mean, I think that there is that volatility of the election, but I don't know. I have to go home and do my research on it, I guess, but just from seeing what I saw with the numbers since the beginning of the year. They've been coming down.
I think we'll continue based upon that to hold.
I mean, that's me. I'm only one person, though. I mean, like,
Well, sure.
you know, I don't know. I don't want to speak for the board.
And we're only two. And I
Well,
agree 100%.
no, I mean, I don't want
and
to speak for the board. I don't know, you know.
I would assume electric rates are going to follow along with gasoline rates, and I have not seen them going anywhere but up. So I have not seen, I have not seen anything going down, but
I think it's
I know my electric bill has definitely not gone down. I don't know if I pay my bill every month when it comes, and that's what my
I meant,
research
like,
is based off of.
No. I meant, like, I renew my supplier every year.
Oh, yeah.
On a-
No, I do not go out and shop. So
Yeah,
that is
see,
one
there-
thing. Yes,
that-
I
there, my
definitely do
friend,
not
is
go
your
out and shop it
problem.
around.
Yeah, it has reduced significantly from month over month for me this last year.
I have a non-electricity question. So for our annual audit, this was the first year we used our new auditor, correct? So then we have those for a 3-year before we go back out for an RFP, correct? Correct. Okay.
Moving along with the business office, just some disposal services for the district, sewer, auto insurance, CM Region insurance. Our insurance did go up twofold. Number one, we want to make sure we have full and blanket coverage that's applicable to the buildings and the structures that we have within our campus. And anytime you have an experience, the experiences also dictate rate fluctuation. That is line 66. Telephone, postage, and continuing down to line 99, which is liquid propane. We continue and we will go out and look for liquid propane, as that definitely is another utility that's variable in the market, as we well know. That is copy paper for the entire district.
Oh, okay.
We buy that in bulk and we distribute it accordingly.
Did we see copy paper listed a whole bunch of places? Was I wrong? Okay.
You may have seen colored paper and construction paper and things like that. So there's been a little bit of a sort of a change in our philosophy, and you will get a revised final copy of this budget once it's approved. But there are things that we do need to reclassify and recategorize. Last year, for example, the insurance was under 2620 under buildings and grounds, but that is a district-wide insurance policy. So things like that should come under the business office. So once we get all that, you did see the buildings all put postage in their budgets. However, all of their letters and things come down and we run them through the business office and mail them out. So that will all come under the business office once we go through and finalize everything.
You mean you're going to remove those postage line items from elsewhere in the budget because you have this bigger number here? Yes. Got it.
If there are no other further questions for business office, we can move to buildings and grounds.
Dr. Fox, your voice has changed. not loving the $75,000 for the demolition of the house. I won't lie.
Or renovation.
Or, well, then I'm not a fan of that one. So can we get, if you want to demolish it, can we, access like state police, fire marshals, something like that would do a controlled burn on it? Or
We
something
will
like
look
that?
at all options if that's the direction, and we can talk about the direction. We put a line in here to make sure that it just can't sit. There's going to have to be a usage for it, whether that be, as we had stated before, to remodel, but I'll be quite honest, after taking a couple of walks through the building, it's in some significant need. And then we have to figure out if it's worth it financially. And then the other aspect is how much, as we look at quotes to remove it, there's some environmental controls that have to be put into place. The hooking of the electrics and the electricity, the utility lines. And then you have the basement and the foundation, roping off and making sure that it doesn't go into the waterways. Have to also look at, the septic that's there as well. So there's some in the well, and there's some different elements that go into play that certainly are needed for that dwelling. In terms of, do we know it's going to cost $75,000 to remove it? No, I do not. We don't have full pricing quotes yet, and that's variable. I know there's permitting that's associated with all of that. That's built into those costs as well. If that's the direction. We put it in certainly as, and again, I don't want to, this is a conversation we can have, but it gives us time, and it builds an element within the budget to give time to whether you want to renovate or you want to remove.
I hear what you're saying, and I understand the concept of putting something in the budget. I'm still, as I mentioned before, I'm concerned about the deficit budget that we have, and the 75's here, the 85,000's there, the extra $40,000 on the iPad refresh, or whatever amount of money that, it's adding up, right? And so I'm just trying to figure out,
Certainly does.
So.
Respectfully, I understand completely what you're saying. It all does. When we look at the overall growth, and we'll show a full picture at the end, we'll show a full picture as was asked for before. We'll show expenses versus expected revenue. We'll show that whole aspect, and we'll also show historically. We'll take a look at all of those elements here. But yes, I understand completely.
Do we think we need a new gator, or can we limp along for another year? I just know we're looking for anywhere to try to trim this down a little bit, and that one jumps out at me. I don't know.
The HVAC repairs, were any of those ones that we were earmarking with the $15 million?
No, your HVAC repairs are those unfortunate situations that happen in break. If we decide to move forward and replace a full HVAC system, possibly at one of our buildings, there's a likelihood that, yes, there could be lesser expense of maintenance and breakage, but it doesn't eliminate any time, of course, we have those movable parts that something could go wrong along those elements. So we have two systems. We have a high school system and an elementary that's geothermal. And our middle school is heat pump system operated by chilled water. Is that correct?
So what's the difference between then the HVAC maintenance agreement of 65,000 and then the HVAC repair of 150,000?
Agreement is PM program, units is half of that, and the other half is patrols and the chiller services each year. Contract's 32 and the other one's 35.
So rooftop unit service is removing the filters, putting new filters in, lubricating all the parts that needed to be, making sure that everything's in operational order.
Is there any of the one-time purchases, like the Gator or whatever, that can be purchased with the money that we're borrowing? Like, I don't know, I don't remember exactly what, I know we didn't have earmarked all of that money, but I don't know what we can use that are one-time purchases that we know we're not gonna be, it's not gonna be a continuing line item in the budget, because I know we can't use it for that, but.
A Gator piece of equipment that has a life expectancy of greater than
A year.
a year that could be a capital investment, yes. So to answer your question, yes, it could.
Before we move out of buildings and grounds, in the present year budget, there was a line item last year for the Avant tractor, and there was a net amount put in as the cost of the district with the trade-in. And Mr. Howell went out, and we ended up selling the different parts, the different pieces, and actually saved, what, $15,000 over what we would have gotten with the trade difference. He went out and put it out on municipal bid, and we actually sold the items and saved $15,000 off of what we had anticipated. So he did a great job with that.
Do you think that with the current Gator that we have, like I know you said, like for you, like driving around the district, like it may just need shocks, that's something that you don't want to replace just because of longevity, but is that something that could be done? Can the same type of thing be done that maybe a local farmer would want it just to run around to do fence repair or something like that, that would want to at least?
Well, I get $2,000 for trade-in, so I'm trying to utilize $2,000
With a trade-in. And do we have any kind of attachments that go on the front of it that we use, so we don't have anything that goes on, it's just literally, okay.
Any other questions on buildings and grounds? All right, jumping into 3210, school-sponsored activities. School-sponsored activities, you'll see co-curricular positions. These co-curricular positions are part of the collective bargaining agreement. You'll see repairs and maintenance under band and choir. because it gets classified under a co-curricular activity, student activity. Field trips for band and choir. Items number 40 to 44 are shipping for musical equipment as well as sheet music. Travel band and choir, 50 through 58, are for the band and choir teachers. '64 to 83 are some basic supplies, different parts consisting a lot of miscellaneous uniform needs as well as reeds.
Can we go back just quickly up to substitute teachers again underneath field trips, band, and choir? So it's listed at 27 and 34. I mean, is that a duplicate or?
Substitute teacher for absence, 600.
And then substitute teacher daily rate, 4,500.
4,500. So I think when we look at all of the different activities that they're going out at, I think the 60 was probably, I'm sorry, the 600, I think they were broken into several trips, probably organized that way. So altogether, if you put 4,500 and 600, it would certainly be 5,100 would be the total allotment for substitute teachers based on the trips.
That seems high compared to the other.
Sure,
compared to
I
the
think,
other. The other departments.
Yeah, I think our historically band and choir have been out. They technically will go out on different gigs for. West Side Singers will go out and into the community, and it requires sometimes partial. And I know Mr. Funk will rely on coverages, but anytime we cover, if it's a prep period or an instructional period, it's certainly obligated to according to collective bargaining agreement to be paid.
And that larger number, basically, they estimated $150 per day, and that covers 30 music trips. That's West Side, chorus, band together. So that's for 30 trips. They budgeted substitutes.
It's not high, I can tell you that. My son's in West Side.
Okay.
They do a ton of trips. Their spring trip.
Yeah. They're everywhere.
I want to point out something really quick too as well. Line number 19, you'll see band uniforms. That has been asked of us, I believe, a couple of different times, and it is in the budget. So band uniforms are due. The band director has done an incredible job, I think, of researching a multitude of different uniforms and providers and what can be, what has a longevity and what can be designed that has less movable pieces that don't fall apart, if I'm accurate in saying that, Mr. Funk, when we met with him. You know, pieces that aren't going to fall off in the rain or that have, that is decorative versus ones that have the functionality. So, yeah, there's, it's incredible the different, you don't have to necessarily hem each pair of pants. There's built-in ways to be able to adjust them. And it's certainly time for new uniforms.
So, dumb question. If you're getting new uniforms that are able to be these adjustments, do we still need a line item for alterations and repairs?
gonna need altered for each kid.
But he's saying that these new ones
There
come
will
with
be
adjustable stuff.
some alterations, but not the whole, like where you need a seamstress, there will be some alterations needed. So, and plus, we have to take in, yes, we're ordering the band uniforms. We probably won't get them till next spring because of ordering the customization. So we will be adjusting the current uniforms we
Okay.
had for the fall marching spring, for the fall and summer marching band season.
But so moving forward, though, do you see us, if we're buying if we're spending $30,000 on new band uniforms for the fall of 2025, would we need $2,500 $2,000 in repairs?
I wouldn't see that moving away from the uniforms we currently have to the ones that Mr. Karaher has worked to design. I think we'll see that number. There'll probably be a little bit in there always, but not a couple $1,000.
Yeah, okay.
No, I think you'll see that down, well, that's a really good question. What's? No, you'll see line number 15 as WSSS uniform alterations at 800. So West Side Singers has. And I believe there's some updates as well in here for, under supplies for the west side as well. So you'll see under replacement equipment, band and choir, you'll see for West Side, 121, 122, 123, 124, 125, 126, 127, 128, and 129 for replacement items. And they do a good job of preserving, taking a look at what they need, inventorying what they have, and as they go out a lot, making sure that there's an array of different items that fully fit what students need. Any additional comments or questions that rounds out that category? That was 3210. And the last is 5110.
Hold on, before you go on there, so underneath the miscellaneous band and choir, like what are those number? I'm just confused of what it's paying for. So a 159, 160, 161. Like, is it, I don't know what it's paying for. So 2 rehearsals prior to winter and spring.
That is paying for your, I believe it's the accompanist, how do I say that word? Somebody, thank you, the pianist.
And then the same thing, winter and spring concert performance?
That is correct.
Maybe we should kind of indicate that, because there's no, like, I would not have known what that was for. So you have the accompanist in 162, but is that, so we're paying the pianist, whoever comes in, for 2 rehearsals, winter and spring, the winter and spring concert performance, any additional community gigs, and then their travel on the spring trip.
That is accurate.
Okay. Yeah, if we could just kind of indicate that that's what those numbers are, that would be helpful. Just, what's that? Oh, sorry.
Yep, we'll go ahead and note that as well. So that rounds out review of the budget. So, not quite yet.
No, there's more.
There's absolutely going to be more.
Well, we get to find out what the big numbers are, I think, at the end, right? Is that what we're doing now?
The big unveiling,
Yeah,
sure.
the big unveiling.
Well, you know, it is the exercise behind this, and again, you know, I'm not going to belabor the issue at 10 o'clock at night because there is a lot of information here, and we've gone through a lot of information. I think it's important for the community to understand that this is meeting number 4, and we're still going to go over information on April 16th. Nobody can say, certainly sitting here, that the board has not done its due diligence of reviewing every item necessary in terms of the general fund budget. The general fund budget is designed necessarily to be able to provide for the programs and operations and to ensure that the curriculum and the buildings are maintained in the order and the principle of which we believe in firmly. So now moving forward, we'll go through the budget preview for the 24-25. Taking a look at some revenue assumptions for 24-25, some favorable assumptions as a modified Act 1 tax increase. Again, Act 1 is designed and has been designed to ensure that it's inflationary. It's designed to keep up with inflation. So we have an increase in interest revenue that has been earned. We have an increase in earned income tax, an increase in collection of our delinquent tax revenue based upon the hard work of the business office, increased basic ed subsidy from the late in 23-24's announcement to where we are right now, and an increase in special education funding in 23 and 24. Some assumptions that were unfavorable, we know that ESSERS 2 has gone out, as well as a decrease in ESSERS 3, and that will end relatively soon as well. Taking a look at our a pie chart here, where we'll take a look at overall revenue sources, you will see in the green, it's 49.25% is local. State is running quite parallel at 47.04%. Federal is lagging behind at 3.71%. And again, when Individuals with Disabilities Education Act was first enacted by the federal government, it was designed to be 100% funded. I believe the close that they have received or came close to was in the 30%, if I'm accurate in saying that. Somebody can fact check me. I could be wrong. It could be higher to 40, but I don't believe that's the case. Taking a look at 24-25 revenue sources, you'll see local revenue, state revenue, federal revenue, for a total revenue of $36,478,654. Local revenue sources.
Are you going to send this to us so I don't have to write this stuff down? Are you going to send this presentation to us after this is over?
If you'd like me to.
Yeah, then I won't write anything down if that's okay.
Sure. Let me make a note of that. I can remember to do that. Sorry. Local revenue sources, 24-25 projected. Local revenue is at 17,966,355. State revenue is very close at 17,160,956. I can tell you typically you'd see more on the local side than you would on the state side. Expenditures and some negative pressures. So we continue to see some negative pulling that have increased. And we've seen an increase in utility cost from electricity to liquid propane across the board. We've seen an increase in special education services. That's just a cost of being able to provide the needs of students. Increase in cyber charter costs and inflationary costs. No worries.
I'm baffled.
Oh, no worries at all.
I tried to get her to zoom in so they could see the screen, and the camera went crazy. It's just like circling the room. It's pointing over there at the flag right now. Anyhow, go ahead, continue.
Oh, no worries. So the 24-25 expenditure chart is $38,012,562. The largest portion of our expenditures is instruction, and that accounts for 57.91%. Debt service is a small 6%. Student activities makes up 2.61%. And support services makes up 33.25%. Preliminary budget overview, revenues versus expenses. The 24-25 projected revenue is $36,478,654. Projected expenditures of $38,012,562 for a preliminary budget deficit at this point at $1,533,908. Now, it is important to note that when we were building our revenue, we included the Act 1 index. Let me rephrase that. When we built our revenue, we incorporated the adjusted Act 1 index into this as for revenue purposes. What that means is we as a district are asking for, there is 7.2%, and we cannot, with Act 1 index, we're asking to get 7.2% of additional revenue. That does not mean an individual's taxes are going up 7.2%. What that means is we are asking for a 7.2% of local assistance in gaining 7.2%. That means approximately 0.69 mils of
It's to be determined, but it's probably.
to TBD based upon STEB when we factor that into the formula.
What amount of money will we be bringing in with the tax increase to the Act 1? What does that number look like?
It should be just under 800,000.
And I don't understand what you're saying when you're saying that we're asking for a 6.9% increase in local funding. Where will that come from if it's not coming from an individual real estate tax increase?
It comes from a real estate tax increase, absolutely. When I say 7.2% is the adjusted Act 1 index, we are gaining 7.2% of income from that tax increase. That does not mean that everybody's tax bill would be going up 7.2%. Correct?
Yes.
And I don't understand that, so if somebody were asking me that question, I wouldn't be able to explain it to them.
What we certainly...
So the way that the Act 1 index works and the Act 1 modified is that you take your previous year's real estate revenue, right, from local taxes, and you multiply it by the 7.2%. That's the maximum that it can go up. So we know that there have been additional properties added to the tax roll in the past year. So because they've been added on, that amount of money is dispersed over all of the new properties. So it's not going to be a total 7.2% increase to everyone. Does that make sense?
It does, I guess, but what does the effective rate look like for an individual? Did you say it's something closer to 6%, or what would?
I don't calculate it in those terms. So once you take your previous year's real estate revenue, you multiply it by the 7.2%, then you go in and you say, okay, this is the revenue we expect to get from real estate taxes. Then you plug in what your assessed values are. Then you plug in the STEB information, and then the system sort of generates what your millage will be. So if there were no increase in assessed value, then it would have been approximately 0.91 mils of increase. But because we've had other properties that have now been added, that's probably going to drop down somewhere in the 0.7 mils. Does that make sense? You're spreading that tax burden over a larger base of assessed value taxes. Yes, correct. There's a state tax equalization board as well. So it's kind of the reverse process of what you would normally think. You're not taking the information, this is our assessed value, here's the amount of increase we want, and by millage, and this is what our total is. It's kind of backwards. You start with the end number in mind of what your maximum tax rate can be based upon the millage and the assessed values. If your assessed values have increased, then it's going to decrease the overall effect to everyone. I don't think I did a good job of explaining that, but if I had my system up here, I could show it to you. That would probably help you understand a little better. And then lastly, on that screen, the governor has proposed a level funding proposal, and they've announced what it would be for each school district. We have not counted that in the budget yet because it has not been passed into law. So that's just a number that is possible that we would receive from the state. So that level funding, $887,187. If that becomes law and that does get passed through, we're looking at a deficit of approximately $646,000.
Is that the Plan Con?
No, unfortunately, PlanCon is no longer in existence. What this is just an increase in basic ed subsidy and a formula driven to basically help school districts. But again, it's all reliant on speculation, and it's the governor's proposal, and we'll see where it goes, certainly in the House and Senate when it gets approved or proposed and voted on in June. Unfortunately, this first budget took a long time to finalize. I think it was October or even later by the time all the elements were finalized. That's why certainly it's something we're watching and we're hopeful of, but we won't add hope into the numerical numbers. So in the last, I believe there has not been a tax increase within the Susquenita School District in 7 years. We are, just like everybody, we are facing budget inflation. We are facing increases and a tremendous amount of prices as well. It's certainly, and I don't want to make an understatement, that we do everything we can within this budget to look at elements that can be delayed or elements that need to be done now without compromising what is needed and necessary for our students. So going to the next slide is the budget adoption process. The budget adoption process, the Pennsylvania School Code allows for a reduction in millage rate from the preliminary budget to the final budget, but not an increase. So that means typically in May when we go to vote on the preliminary budget, if there's no increase in that preliminary budget, there cannot be an increase added in June for the final budget. If there is one added in May, it could be removed by June, but it can't be the reverse. And certainly the budget must sit for 30 days from the preliminary budget adoption until the final budget adoption in June. Certainly, we'll talk more. We have it as an item on our agenda on April 16th's board meeting at the end to continue these conversations. We'll be more than happy to send this proposal out to you in an email, as well as the information that's, that you had sent on the ability to arbitrage funds as well. But at this point, certainly we'll take any questions you may have.
I don't have a question. I just have a more of a comment. I think in a conversation, Mr. Holmes, you and I had, you had indicated that just the amount of what even the annual increases in our budget for salaries of staff year over year, what that amount equaled to. And at this point, what we're looking at is that is something we have to have our staff. We have to continue to pay our teachers. And I think you had indicated that amount came out to about a $700,000 increase, if I'm correct. And so what we're basically looking at is that if we want to continue to be able to balance our budget, even after we've gone through all of this exercise of cutting, you know, we're still looking at that our budget, we still continue to experience inflation, that by doing this with taxes, it is just really to even look at it as offsetting our salary increases of our staff.
Yes, that is a correct statement.
But it's also fair to say that because we don't know the state amount of funding and that you will build a budget very conservatively, because we don't know what that's going to be, that the conservative budget that we built last year, the deficit built into that was, for all intents and purposes, about the increase of taxes different than what it turned out to be. Because we're about, you said we're about $1.5 million in the proposed deficit, and we're about $700,000 now.
Well, I think the difficulty is we are still several months away from the ending of the conclusion of
True.
the year. And I don't want to speculate on what the end of this conclusion of the year will be without an audited number.
Right.
Because there could be different things that are in there. So I don't, but yes, the difficult part for a school district is our budget always comes first before a state budget. But oftentimes, the design is not to fully be reliant on state funding to support as well. I forgot my train of thought, so I apologize.
Pretty accurate.
All right, so we will reconvene on April 16th for our school board meeting. We'll send some information out.
There are a couple public comments.
All right. No public comments up there? No? Okay. All right. Looks like Dr. Jones may have been watching. I believe all three of these comments are from him, so I'll just start. First one is, this is a question about the continued use of Microsoft Office software. I'm not sure I understand why our teachers need to convert their Word or Excel documents so they can be stored in the cloud. Can't we store them in their current format? If converting them is absolutely necessary, can this duty be moved to summer or something, since this does not seem to be an urgency? If I understood this correctly, teachers can still create Excel, Word, and other Office-based documents, so why do they need to change the format of everything they have already created? Next one is...
Well, let me go ahead and try, if it's all right, you want me to go ahead and answer that question as well?
Well, I mean, historically, we don't respond to public comments, but since it's...
He's a board member, so I think the The question there certainly isn't, this isn't a 1 year, we've been asking people to just do it. It's been over time, and this has been a progression to move towards shared documents for a variety of different reasons, in which I hopefully outlined earlier. One of those reasons certainly is being able to share a document, with multiple people, being able to have resources that don't just leave as an individual leaves, and we're able to have and maintain those. Number two, I think there's a shared collaboration that needs to occur amongst grade levels and amongst us as administrators in a common format and platform. And we want to move away from local storage and more, and the more that we could store virtually and on the cloud is a much more safer element for all of us at this time. So this has not just been a one-time, this is what you're going to do in the next 2 weeks. It's certainly been a progression, and we continually move and help and assist and provide ongoing trainings and time for people to do so. It doesn't mean we simply eliminate all of Office Suite. Obviously, as we saw within the budget, there's an item there. It just means we want to move forward to a basis in which time we all have a similar platform to be able to use for collaboration and for consistency purposes.
All right, next up, again, Dr. Jones, Wheatville Township says, consider moving tuition reimbursement to the Office of Superintendent for Academics. It is not tuition reimbursement, as these particular staff members are not reimbursed, but the district simply provides the professional development. But then I believe he tried to correct himself with his next statement, because he says correction. Maybe move the staff PE to employee training and development instead of tuition reimbursement. So just some suggestions as to how you categorize those costs.
Well, I think the first part, when we look at this, the first part certainly is us getting this information out to you, and it was certainly a business office tedious process in a technology process as well. And getting that in formatting, we know there are going to be some shifting and some internal moves as we look at the charts of account. That's not to shift the price totals. We wanted to get those out. But there's going to be some internal movements and some really great points. And I know Dr. Jones spoke to us and wanted to be here. He's not able to get back this evening as he's out of town. But certainly appreciate him watching in, listening attentively, and also offering those feedback as well from the meeting. Oh, thank you. I think we'll go ahead and, if there's no other final comments, we will